Good evening. Allow me to begin the Ferndale City Council meeting call to order of Monday, February the 8th, 2010. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Mayor Covey?
Here.
Council members Baker? Here. Galloway?
Here.
Lennon?
Here.
And Piana? Here.
All here and accounted for. Thank you. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Approval of the agenda. We have an addition tonight of a resolution to encourage research for placement of a crosswalk on Woodward Avenue.
I appreciate that, Madam Clerk, and with the blessing of the council, we could add this. Again, this has to do with our request to MDOT to reconsider replacement of the crosswalk back to Woodward Avenue at Withington. Is there any objection to adding that to the agenda? Perhaps at the very bottom of the agenda, 7C. If not, is there a motion to approve as amended?
So moved.
Support.
Moved Galloway, seconded Baker. Approval of the agenda as amended, Madam Clerk?
Council members Baker? Yes. Galloway?
Yes.
Lennon?
Yes.
Piana? Yes. And Mayor Covey?
Yes, passes unanimously. Thank you. Next item, Madam Clerk.
A presentation by the Ferndale Public Schools.
My name is Jessica Stilger, Communications Specialist for the Ferndale Public Schools. I just have a couple things tonight. First, we'd like to thank everyone in the community who has come out to our most recent district events. The first was our community breakfast. It was small, but I think it was very effective, and it was wonderful to hear the students speak about their experiences to our community members and business owners. Secondly, our extravaganza, all-city extravaganza that took place on Saturday, January 30th was fantastic. It was our first opportunity trying it on a Saturday, and we had the best turnout we've ever had. So we'd like to thank everyone who came out and enjoyed the school presentations and the music presentations, and we think it was so successful we are going to keep that same format for years to come. Also, we'd like to thank everyone who came to the parent rally at Coolidge this past Saturday. It was an opportunity for parents to come out and take some free workshops on a variety of different parenting aspects and from business owners in the community. Those were all great opportunities for people to come learn about the Ferndale schools, and if anyone is interested in learning more, they are more than welcome to join our weekly e-newsletter, which comes out every Friday, and it's got information for all of our schools and for information about our district. So if anyone is interested in joining that newsletter, you can please email fpsfanout@ferndaleschools.org. Also, the Ferndale Education Foundation has two upcoming events. One is this week and one is March 4th, and the Education Foundation supports Ferndale schools and staff through a variety of things, through mini grants, through visiting authors, through tutoring programs, and these are two pretty big fundraisers that we have coming up. The first is this Thursday at Dino's Lounge. It's called our Winter Spectacle. It's an opportunity for people to come out and get to know what the Ferndale Education Foundation is, what we do for the community and the schools. And it's a great way to come out and have a good time after work. It's from 4 to 7 this Thursday at Dino's. It's $20 at the door. It gets you food and entertainment from a local band called the Winonas. And we are going to have teachers there presenting what they receive funding for their mini grants from the foundation. So we invite the public to come out, stop in, and learn about the FEF. Our second fundraiser, which is our biggest of the year, is on March 4th at Boogie Fever. It's $30 a ticket from 6:30 to 9:30, and we're going to have DJ dancing. It includes food from Dino's and dessert from Pinwheel Bakery, and we'll have a mini live auction. And our big event that evening is we are auctioning off a 2010 Ford Fusion. So we are selling 2,500 tickets for $20 each. We invite everyone in the community, up to 2,500, to purchase tickets. They are available from any board member, and you can get the order form on our website, which is ferndaleschools.org/FEF. And our goal here is to raise $30,000 so that we can put that money right back into the district and give it right back to our students. So again, ferndaleschools.org/FEF to learn more information about any of our upcoming fundraisers, and we hope to see you there. That's it for me.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, next item, please.
A presentation of the Ferndale's Goodfellow Awards.
Good evening. 2 weeks ago, the fire department, we gave out our fire service awards for 2009. And at that time, we were planning to present an award. The Goodfellows were planning to present an award, and through a series of miscommunications, that did not happen. And the award was to Larry and Monica Mills. So I want to publicly apologize to them for the confusion. They've been gracious enough to come back tonight. We'll try to make amends. The Goodfellows were formed back in 1923, and originally it was the Suburban Goodfellows. In 1933, they became the Ferndale Goodfellows when they broke away from the other group. Since that time, they have tried to live up to their motto, "Let no child be without a Christmas," and this year was no exception. Before we have Larry and Monica come up, I'll give you just a few statistics if I can. This year they had 67 families they took care of, 181 children, and 41 seniors. They got help from the First United Methodist Church, who supplied food to 7 seniors and 8 of the families, and the Ferndale Elks, who supplied food to 28 seniors and 18 of the families. Traditionally, the biggest fundraiser has been the Goodfellow paper sale. Well, 2 years ago, Larry and Monica found an opportunity to host a party. It was the 75th anniversary of the end of Prohibition. And they thought, well, it was pretty good 2 years ago, let's try it again this year. Well, this year, they eclipsed the paper sale, and the paper sale raised just over $3,000, and their end of Prohibition party this year raised $3,342. If they could come up. Up here tonight is Ken Kroner. He's the chairman of the Board of Trustees, and Jared Porowczyk, who is the treasurer for the Goodfellows.
Of course, we couldn't do this without the support of our local establishments that let us host their party in their establishment. We had 10 different venues. Some were sponsors. We had product sponsor, and lots of volunteers that helped us out. There's no way Larry and I could do this alone. So if I could really quick just mention Bud Easton, Ann Hubbard, and Bonnie Miller from outside of the city of Ferndale. They like to come here to play as well. And then inside our city, I'd like to thank Julie Anderson, Becky and Ron Babinaugh, Jean Kavanaugh, Craig Covey, Jeannie Davis, Tiffany and Tom Gagne, Tammy and Don Howard, Cheryl and Steve Kuzmanovich, Dan Martin, Mary O'Brien, Greg Pollica, and Kerry Watkins. They were out there helping us pass the jug. So
it was a one-day event.
Yes, it was a one-day event.
All righty, thank you.
One more round of applause for the Mills. A lot of you recognize Larry Mills. He's the unofficial city photographer for the city of Ferndale. You see him out there all the time recording and taking photographs. And Monica Mills just got done with a 10-day Ferndale Blues Festival where she acted as co-chair. So these are wonderful citizens who help us out a lot. Madam Clerk.
A presentation of the municipal building project.
Thank you. Mr. Brunner, will you introduce?
Thanks, Your Honor, I will. The council spent nearly 3 years carefully considering the city's facilities needs, and at the same time it has arrived at a decision point regarding the courthouse and municipal building project. We've also arrived at a crossroads in terms of city finances and the future of city government. The council was scheduled to make a decision regarding the municipal building project this month. However, given the budget challenges that the city faces, balancing the budget for fiscal year ending 2011, and the very real possibility that city government may be getting much smaller in the near future, I've asked the top 2 design-build teams that have gone through this process and been vetted by the project team to make a presentation tonight so that the council and the community can see what we've been working on, but also to extend the guaranteed maximum prices of their proposals until Friday, May 7th, which is the deadline for the council to adopt the fiscal year ending 2011 budget. So those top 2 teams are here tonight to make their presentation, but I'm not recommending or requesting that the council take any action at this time, but instead consider this project simultaneously along with the 2011 budget in March and April. And with that, I'll turn it over to the first team. Who won the coin toss before the meeting? Yes. All right. I'm not going to try to introduce your team because there's too many people and I'll mess it up, so I'll let you introduce yourselves.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Bob Washer. I'm the president of Mico Construction. Also, I'll be the project executive on the new municipal project. If I could come forward, I have some information for you to make it a little bit easier to follow along with the slides. John?
Give them to the clerk, and they will, or he can distribute them. You can. Thank you.
Should be a large sheet for everybody, and the follow along slide presentation to the city council members. It's ironic that we come to join with you the day after the Super Bowl. Seems like this is our Super Bowl tonight. We're head-to-head with another great competition, another great competitor, and we hope that you can see some of the things that we do tonight, a little bit different, a little bit innovative. I've got a great team. I've coached soccer, baseball, a little bit of CYO basketball over the years, and I found that the best team players are the ones that have a little bit of fire in their belly, and I have those kind of people on my team. I'd like to introduce them to you at this point in time. To my left, on the Mico team, is Dwayne Bernard, who's our chief estimator. Dwayne. Behind him, Colleen Kofel, who will be your project manager. To the right of Colleen, Bill Van Marter, who will be your superintendent. And on the keyboard, I have John Claycomb, who will be the also one of the estimators that's worked on this project, but also he's our lead AP, and we'll keep an eye on how we go through the lead process. The SIDOC team represented tonight by Bob Jordan and David Zanley, and they will talk a little bit later. John? The Mico Construction Company is a wholly owned subsidiary of the National Construction Enterprises located in Pontiac, Michigan. We are a full-service construction manager and general contractor since 1996. And as far as experience, I came to town in 1985, and the first project I worked on was the 36th District Court, which we called the Madison Center downtown, and been doing facilities similar to that ever since. So if you add all those dates up, between Colleen and Bill and myself, we have 93 years. That's 93 years of diverse construction experience, all significant to the project experience that we're about ready to progress on with your project. Okay, John. I thought that on the what we call the placemat, upper left-hand corner is an agenda. These are the items that we hope to be talking with you tonight. We intend to talk very briefly to recap a little bit about the previous presentation, give you some ideas of some of the things we've talked over with the Building Selection Committee and also with the Planning Commission. Talk a little bit about the schedule, a little bit about the budget. I'll let Robert and Dave talk a little bit about the design solution, and then obviously towards the end, proper amount of time left for you to ask questions and for us to provide answers. The presentation we made to the selection committee, they asked us to identify top 3 challenges that we saw would be in our areas of expertise. We knew that it was a tough, restricted site. We knew there's only so much area in which to build in and to tie onto the adjacent existing buildings. We also knew that the program had certain requirements that would ask us to take a look at that, understand what the square foot areas would be, and put those in a proper proportion and adjacent to the proper areas as far as offices. We also knew budget would, by all means, be a top priority, that the budget, not only the budget that was proposed to us in the RFP, but in following weeks and months, the budget that's in front of us and in front of the city of Ferndale that we'll have to work to. We also knew that the design image was one that would be very important to discuss along the way. Okay, John. As far as the schedule goes, we were given a schedule in the RFP. First thing we did was look at the original schedule and validate it, and to see if it wouldn't be possible to possibly reduce and compress that schedule so that we wouldn't be in the area where you have your daily business. We would get in, do the project as quickly and as economically, and be able to get out of your way in a proper time. The phasing obviously would drive the schedule. We were determined to put together a master plan that would show all three phases. The first phase would talk about the brand new courthouse. The second phase would be some possible renovations and expansions to City Hall and to the police station. So the number of phases and the duration of the schedule obviously ran hand in glove. We also knew that we had to maintain daily operations here at City Hall with people coming in and out and with the daily activities of your employees. We also knew that the budget was complicated, but we wanted to develop a master plan. So as we went through all these three phases, we could design a project that we wouldn't be building walls that were going to be torn down two years later. We wanted to make sure we had an overall plan of all three phases that would determine how this project could be built now and in the future and the associated costs that would go along with that. At all times, we placed special attention to the program requirements. As we went through the budget, we went through a natural progression of budget refinement. The budget also, we felt, could be obtained, and we would also be able to make the courthouse project a LEED Gold certified project. Robert will talk a little bit about that. Flexibility to work with the users groups was very important. We had information that came from the Plant Moran people. We did not necessarily have the information from the user groups, the police department and the people at City Hall. Just examples of some of the projects that we've worked on at MICO just recently, projects that were phased projects, projects that had a limited budget, projects such as the Tupacolomie project in West Bloomfield, and we're currently working with the Salvation Army to work within their budget restraints. When we're complete, when the design is all put together, we know that we'll give you a seamless, integrated project that mines and puts together the existing and the new. And I'd like to let Robert talk about the design.
Hi. As Bob mentioned, my name is Robert Jordan. I'm the principal in charge of all design and engineering activities for SIDOC Group. I also have Dave Zanley here who will be available to answer any questions. Just to give you a brief idea, SIDOC Group is about a just over 70-person full-service firm. We were very fortunate about a year and a half ago to have the firm of Wilkie and Zanley join our group. Dave was a principal of that firm. They have been a fixture for 55 years down in Wyandotte. They have completed many notable municipal projects. A few of them you see behind you here. A couple in particular, the U.S. Border Patrol, that was finished just a couple years ago. Department of Homeland Security in Gibraltar, obviously very intensive law enforcement use. Currently, we are shortlisted on another station with MICO. We have completed a number of projects with MICO. We have teamed with them fairly regularly over the last couple of years. Another one particularly of interest here would be the City of Gibraltar. This was a combined City Hall, police station, and fire station. Notable for a couple of reasons. First of all, image, as with the Ferndale project, was a big issue for them. They had, nautical history down there in Gibraltar. Was very important that they showcase that. The project was recognized for Dave's design solution on that. Perhaps more importantly, the project was also recognized for the fact that it originally started as a 50,000 square foot project. It ended up a 30,000 square foot project because of budget. Very common issue nowadays. It's always been common, but now more than ever. So from 50,000 square foot to 30,000 square foot, yet all of the major spaces, all of the critical spaces were still accommodated within the facility. And if you can switch, please, John. And that leads into our design here. Obviously, budget is an issue. We had a program, we had an RFP. What we need to do at this point is sit down with the stakeholders and user groups, vet the program, make sure all the spaces are right-sized, make sure they're all necessary. Many of the strategies that we employed on Gibraltar would certainly be used on this project. So here you're looking at our site plan. Obviously, this site was very tight. This was a lot of program to put onto this site. We feel we successfully accommodated all of the issues. And again, we will state that this is based on our best understanding of the program, a couple of meetings where some information was passed back and forth. But this is our best concept at the moment. We understand this is not the final concept. Certainly in the committee meetings and planning commission meetings, suggestions have been made, more landscaping, modifying the entries a little bit, more glass, different color brick. We understand completely this is not the design. We need to sit down with the stakeholders and figure all that out. But this is our best concept at the moment. And on the site plan, most notably, I'm sorry, also you'll notice we don't have the floor plans in the presentation. You have them on your placemat, but in the time allotted, we just wouldn't have time to go through the floor plans in detail. The most notable feature on the site plan is the courtyard and reflecting pool. We felt it was important to have a very prominent gathering space in this plan. It lines up with the access of where the existing court is now, which we understand will probably be a parking area in the future. So it lines up with that. It creates a gathering space. All of the entries for the court, the city hall, and the police station are gathered around that courtyard. There is seating all around the reflecting pool and other landscape walls to just make it a nice, comfortable gathering space for both the employees and the general public. Again, please switch. Now, in the elevations, you can see, obviously, we have the existing city hall. We need to respect that. We need to acknowledge it and respect it, which we believe we do here. We continue the colonnade on the existing court building. And basically, the way we looked at this, again, as a master plan, having all the elements there first before we decide what might be cut from the project, and recognizing that things may be cut from the project, we had two unifying elements. First is the colonnade, which plays off the existing City Hall building, and then also the brick. On the far left side of the facility, we matched the existing brick color of the City Hall. But on the new forward elements, such as the portion of the court on the left, the new police station entry, and a new entry at the City Hall, we also used a different colored brick. So that calls out each of these entrances and serves as a unifying element. Now, if some of the elements on the addition to the police station and the addition to the City Hall are eliminated from the project, we still have the colonnade and the buff colored brick, which ties the project together. So as you can see, we tried to respect, we tried to plan for what is undoubtedly going to happen in the future of portions of the project being cut out. Our design accommodates that. I believe the last issue, the LEED Gold, I'm sure many people here are questioning how we can do LEED Gold, that's more money. Normally, yes, that would be true. We honestly believe on this project, again, to enhance Ferndale's image. LEED Silver is more and more common now. You know, everybody wants LEED, nobody wants base certification, everybody wants to go silver. So to enhance Ferndale's image, we thought, okay, let's go gold. Now, on a normal project, greenfield site, that could get pretty expensive. You're starting from scratch, and there's a lot of elements that need to be put in. Here we have not a brownfield site, but is a redeveloped urban site. So right off the bat, we get a large amount of points for that. And these are basically free points just because of the site. So we're already starting with a big spot of points. And we feel we can now go beyond the silver very economically, starting with that base of points.
Mr. Jordan, would you explain to the audience, though, what LEED means, in case folks aren't aware of that?
Leadership in environmental and energy efficient design. What that is, if I can address you a little bit, LEED a few years ago, not sure how many years ago now, people started to really focus on sustainable design, design that was more responsible to the environment, recycled materials, more energy efficient systems, and things of that nature. So the U.S. Green Building Council got together. There's basically just a bunch of people who were perhaps experts in various fields, got together and formed this nonprofit organization. And through the years, they have developed a standard. Now, it just changed about a year ago. It changed to the version 3.0 system. And there's base certification, silver certification, gold certification, and platinum. Each one has a different point threshold. So there's a book, about that thick, give or take, that has all the guidelines for achieving these points. So we start a project with a checklist that has all the available points, and we all sit down as a team, the construction team. Usually we would sit down with the owners groups as well and decide what we're going to go for. And in cases particular as this, where budget is very critical, we sit down and we try to point out the most cost-efficient points. In this case, on this project, being an urban site, we can come up with a comprehensive transportation plan to get a bonus point. It doesn't really cost anything. It costs a little bit of our time. That's it. So that's a very intelligent point to go for. So in the end, we collect all these points. We document what we did to get these points. We then submit them to the USGBC. They either certify them or say, no, you don't get this point. And then we're awarded certification if all goes well.
Thank you.
So, you're welcome. So with that, I will turn it back over to Bob.
This is the closing statement here. We definitely enjoy working with the people that we've met so far. We've had a couple great meetings with the Planning Commission and also with the people on the selection committee. We're ready, willing, able to work with you people, with the stakeholders, as Robert has said. And with that, I'd like to open it up for any further questions.
Thank you very much for that presentation. Are you ready, willing, and able to give us another 90 days to make our decision?
Yes, sir, we are.
Very good. Let me open it up to the council table then and find out if folks would like to ask questions of our first guest.
I have a question. I attended your presentation at the Planning Commission meeting a week ago, and I think I asked the other group this question and forgot to ask you. And just wondering how many square feet the courthouse is. What is the footprint of the new courthouse?
I think David can.
It's two floors, about 17,000 total.
17,000.
And just so everyone understands, that also includes the 911 center and the detention block from the police station. So there is a little bit of overlap in the court program.
You also have at least a portion of a basement. I'm curious as to why only part of the footprint contains the basement as opposed to the full basement.
Budget, certainly. The basement was initially, and still is really, an optional item. However, again, looking at costs and efficiencies and things that make sense, we already have to excavate quite a bit anyway. So by the time we excavated as much as we are going to need to, it made sense to at least do a partial basement.
Is a basement more or less expensive than a second floor?
I would say less.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else?
Do you have any rule of thumb for how much court space you need per employee or per caseload?
Varies. It really varies, depending on the municipality.
Right, and it's something, we worked off the program that we were given with those types of spaces and, from experience, the spaces that we've used, but it's not really a rule of thumb, no.
All right, I saw that you did the 33rd District Court, and as you know, that has 3 very different sized courtrooms in it. I think McNally's is huge, and the other guys are a little bit tighter configuration. How do you decide how big the courtroom is?
Actually, those courtrooms are pretty similar in
Are they?
size. Yeah, they are. I mean, they're really based on that standard, the seating arrangement, and then the area in front is a fairly standard size as well.
I guess what I'm getting at is, in what ways could we squeeze space out of this design? Assuming that the court staff is going to be significantly smaller by the time we're done with the project.
Right, and that's what we really need to know. We need to sit down with you and determine that. But in general, certainly we can see if any spaces can be used by 2 different groups. We can determine if any spaces are not absolutely necessary at this time, and we can make sure all the spaces are right-sized. And again, that's just sitting down with you to determine your needs, more than just going by a rule of thumb.
All right. Anything else? The council did vote that we wanted to use labor unions in all of our processes, and this is something that could be done here, correct?
That's correct. That is correct.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much for
All right,
great.
thank you. We appreciate it.
It looks nice.
Thank you very much.
And it works.
It works?
That's what the project team made sure. It works too.
So we're going to need just a couple minutes for them to leave and the other team to
That's very cool.
come in and get up to speed.
I do have one comment, if I may.
Please.
I just wanted to say, I have been itching to see what the city has spent their money on in terms of our consulting fees. So thank you for presenting your hard work today.
Very nice. Very sharp. So it'll just take a couple of moments for the second company to get organized. So, Mr. Bruner, we will not be seeking any action tonight, but rather we'll simply look at these as presentations and bring them back in May. Is that the plan?
Yeah, at any point during the budget process, if the council wants to formally consider the project, then it can come back at any time up until that May 7th deadline.
And both of these companies have organized these projects into 3 phases so that the council could decide to go with the court and/or the renovation of police and/or the renovation of City Hall.
Correct.
I'm saying this just to stall for time.
No, I appreciate that.
Are you gentlemen about ready?
Yes,
Thank you.
we're ready. Dale, are you ready?
I am ready.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, good evening. My name is Steve Daly. I'm president of the Daly Company, and we are the contracting entity for our design-build team, which consists of the Daly Company as the builder, teamed with not one but 2 very talented and award-winning architects in French Associates and Newman Smith Architecture. And with me tonight, I bring Dale Jerome from French, Suzanne Carlson with French, Bert Kosek with Newman Smith, and Scott Wheeler, who is my chief estimator at the Daly Company. I've been told that we have approximately 15 minutes to give a presentation, followed by a little Q&A. So I guess I'd like to start by answering one question, and that I have read in 2 different newspapers today that we're going to be asked if we would be willing to hold our price until May 7th or thereabouts to give you more time to get your budget squared away. And the answer to that question is yes, of course. As much as we would like to roll up our sleeves and get to work, we are sensitive to the city's economics and the budget hurdles that you face. And we believe that it's a reasonable request, it's a prudent decision, and one that we'd be more than happy to accommodate. And in addition to that, I can tell you that we would strive to reduce the overall cost of the project through the most efficient design and construction possible. So we'd be certainly working with you to help tackle those budget issues. I'm going to assume that you all have at least seen our proposal and our design, and of course available for any questions regarding that. But I would just like to give you a little bit of background of who we are, and then I will turn it over to Dale and to Bert to kind of give you a broad overview of our design concept and walk you through some of those prime features. But as the Daly Company, as the contracting entity of our design-build team, to understand who we are a continuation of a family philosophy over 3 generations. My family's been in the construction business in southeast Michigan since 1936, and we have built many recognizable landmarks throughout the area. Our core group of personnel that we've proposed for this job, including our project manager, our superintendent, our chief estimator, myself, we've all worked together for over 25 years. So we have a very cohesive group. We think that we bring you the best team possible from the contractors, and when we team up with French and Newman Smith, we believe that we bring you just a very talented and strong team from design and construction. When we chose to team up with French and Newman Smith, we did it based on our past successful relationship and working with them in the past. The Daly Company has worked with both firms individually and collectively. We've done over $80 million worth of construction work over the past 5 years with these two firms, including two very recent court facilities at 41B District Court and 16th District Court. We have a very high comfort level with working with each other. There is no learning curve as far as our side of the team, so we can dedicate 100% of our effort on working with you to solve your building and programming challenges. We are very owner-friendly. We're very flexible. I think we're very accommodating and a very proactive team member as far as the building group and the team. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Dale, who will give you a quick synopsis of French, and he'll turn it over to Bert and get into Newman Smith and our design. Thank you.
Is it okay if I just stay here, or do I need to go down to the microphone?
If you could pull that microphone over to you or even hold it, then you're good.
It may take me long enough to get it off to say what I have to say. But,
perfect.
Just briefly introduce French Associates. We bring to this team nearly 40 years of design experience, all in the public arena, working specifically for municipalities, school districts, courts. So it's very familiar territory for us to be asked to participate in this type of project. But the one question I want to specifically address is the idea of a dual architect, and that might be a little bit unique, and so I just want to address that right out of the gate for our presentation. It is a planned and strategic decision on our part, and it's something that we have already done very successfully. We're just wrapping up courthouse in Livonia with Newman Smith as co-design team members, and we're just recently just putting the final touches on a court study for the city of Warren. So I just want you to know that we work together throughout all phases of the project. It's comfortable to us now to work together, and we're very excited about working with Ferndale on this project. And with that, I'll let Bert take the remainder of our time talking a little more specifically about the design.
You might recognize some of our buildings. I'm with Newman Smith, and we've been privileged to work on some exciting projects throughout primarily southeastern Michigan. If you look at the slide, there's the Holocaust Museum and the Detroit Science Center and the Corvette Museum. We've also done a number of municipal projects, a community recreation center for the city of Livonia, and most recently the new City Hall, which is kind of the middle slide to the left, for the city of Warren. So I think the common theme is that we think they're all great projects, and where design matters, we often get involved. Enough about our team. Let's talk about your project. Next slide. You've given us three components to look at, and two of them are renovations. It's the City Hall and the police, and the court building, of course, will be a new building. Next slide. Our approach to this is we think it's a little bit different. There are 5 principles that I've listed up there. One begins with the layout, and the whole premise for us in terms of how these buildings should be laid out and the design issue solved is that it should be efficient, it should be able to adapt to change, and it should improve customer service. Second item is cost and quality. There are lots of different ways to provide this. We've done it in such a way that we think is cost effective, and we haven't given up quality by doing that, so that's an interesting balance. A third component is sustainability. I think most of our projects today, that's an important part and becomes an ingredient in all of our projects, but it's certainly something that we've accommodated here. Fourth item is the site. We know you're proud of your community, and we're very familiar with your proposed zoning ordinance changes for the CBD. How do we do this design in such a way that it adapts and incorporates your principles for design? And then lastly, the architecture. It should be civic, dignified, unique to Ferndale, and complementary to the existing buildings. Next slide. In general, this is our concept, and we're trying to eliminate the parking lot, make it more walkable. The white line you see is the pedestrian link. You currently have 2 curb cuts into your parking lot. That certainly is not pedestrian friendly. So the court building, the orange block will fill the gap. There's a plaza that's created amongst the 3 buildings, which we think is a great opportunity, which you'll see in a couple of minutes. And then lastly, currently the back side of the building faces single-family residential. I don't think it's done very nicely now, and we hope to improve that as part of this design. North is up, and I think it'll be up for the rest of this presentation. 9 Mile Road, of course, it's at the top of the page. This is where we've proposed to place the court building. We have made it's linked, but it's separate, and it's separate because philosophically speaking, court should be separate from police and City Hall. So I think you'll see that in some of the later images. Next slide. This is the floor plan proposed for the court building. In some buildings, you have lots of flexibility in terms of how they're designed. Court buildings are very complex. They really are designed from the interior out, and the whole premise is to keep the public separate from the private areas where staff and inmates are. So it's very important. It took great effort, but how do we do that in such a way that it adapts to your site and meets some of the principles that you're interested in terms of how it accommodates your planning principles? The arrow across the top is pedestrian. That's your sidewalk. We've worked hard to take the public space, which is a 2-story atrium space, and make it linear so that it runs parallel to the pedestrian path into 9 Mile Road. So that's where the public can access the building and can see into the building. The zone behind it, downward, is where the staff is. Of course, that's more of a private area, and towards the back of the building we have the secured parking. If you look at secured parking and security for the inmates, if you look at the 2 images to the left, that gives you a sense of what the building might look like on the inside. The lobby as you enter from the plaza, and the clerk counter towards the lower part of the slide. Next slide. The more private areas of the court, meaning those that have less access by the public, we've placed on the 2nd floor. So it's really the court, the waiting areas, and the judge's suite and some other accessory type spaces. Next slide. This is a view from 9 Mile Road. If you can imagine, the window wall system is removed, and we've done that to kind of show the public space. The building has lots of glass across the front. It's transparent, so you'll be able to see into the building, and at night you'll get this kind of glow like you see in the lower right-hand corner. And we've worked hard to not just create architecture on the inside or on the outside, but also on the inside. So as you see, and you'll see stairs and other kinds of architectural features that we think will be interesting. Next slide. I'm going to move on to the police and City Hall. Next slide. For the most part, these are interior renovations. There is which is shown in a circle in the lower right-hand corner. There's a small addition to the back of the building, which I would call it non-architectural. It kind of matches the existing building. The slide in the upper right-hand is a picture of how it looks today, and you're very familiar with that, of course. And so as we've accommodated the interior design of the building, we've done it in such a way to create flexibility and easier access and transparency, and solve a lot of functional issues. There's some additional space that comes about as well, because the current holding cells get replaced with new holding cells, so it allowed the police to kind of grow into those areas, and we've got departments in the right locations. Next slide. This is a enlargement of City Hall. In general, the way it's laid out with this kind of Main Street spine will remain the same, but I think we've renovated or proposed to renovate at least 90% of this upper floor plan, There's an add alternate to expand the lobby and create a lift or an elevator at that main lobby. One of the things we felt we felt was important was to maintain these arcades that you have. So you look at these arrows to the top and off to the side. We think that's something that's attractive about your building, and we want to be careful to not bump out that lobby so far so that it obstructs the pedestrian traffic through those areas. If you look at the image in the upper right-hand corner, that's kind of a bird's eye view of how the City Hall would be modified, and the photograph in the lower right-hand image gives you a sense of the kind of order that space would have. Next slide. So how should it look? If you looked at, I think, all of our work, they're all very different. Our clients are different, our sites are different, our budgets are different. So we took our clues from, let's move on to the next slide, and actually looked at your ordinance again. And there were things that stuck out and we actually believe in. There's a list of, I think, 6 items. Your ordinance says you should promote renovation to preserve history. This building is historic. It was built back in 1964, and I think we should work hard to work with that building. Second item, make the new building compatible with the existing. So how do you do it in such a way that it's complementary? That was one of the challenges. Articulate the facade so that as you're walking along, it's not just a slab of glass or feels like an office building. There's something interesting. There's a rhythm that goes along with that. I already talked about the transparency, the use of high-quality, durable, timeless materials, and the promotion of sustainability. If you look at the images on the right-hand side of the slide, these, in my mind, are great buildings. Lincoln Center in New York, a building by Yamasaki, and up at the top, that's a building by Saarinen. Up at Cranbrook, they have they're very similar in many ways to your building. And we think not everything great was great in the 60s, but we think that your architecture is worth preserving. Next slide. So how do you create a mass in such a way that it's complementary to the architecture? And we're in a building here that's 1.5 stories, and we were very concerned that if we did a conventional 2-story building, it would overpower. It would dwarf your City Hall, much like your neighbor to the east, I think currently dwarfs your building. So we manipulated the form in the public spaces and worked the structural mechanical systems around it so that if you look at the red arrows pointing down, the main shape of the building lines up with, or nearly lines up with, your current City Hall. So we think that it's very respectful. And if you look at the kind of colonnade, although ours is infilled with glass, there's a certain rhythm. So it's not copying what's there, but it's done in a modern way, but it's being respectful. We had options where to put the mechanical screen. We cheated it all the way to the east so that the building kind of transforms and makes this transition up to your 60-foot tall neighbor to the east. Next slide. With the work that's being done at the library, we looked beyond the limits of your site, and we see this, we call it kind of a bookend sort of thing, and hopefully your parking lot, there's some landscape someday at a time together, and maybe a building. The view in the image on the lower right-hand side, you can see you're looking from the front door of the new court building to the east, and you can see the kind of library beyond. So there's this kind of symbolic creation of your civic center. So what should it be made out of? We didn't have to go very far to figure that out. Your building here is made up of brick and stone and glass, and the library has actually similar materials, and we thought to kind of augment that feel of a civic campus that we drew from those materials. Again, it's primarily brick, and we've introduced some metal to kind of break up the scale. The glass is transparent. If you look at the image right in the middle lower part of the slide, it shows you what that front facade might look like. So again, it's not just a slab of glass, but it's articulated with columns and other kinds of things. So it looks civic and not like that office building. Next slide. The creation of the courtyard, or the Civic Plaza, we think is what you have now is kind of underutilized, and we know you have a tree there and nobody wants to cut down trees, but we think there's a way to improve that so that that becomes the main entrance to each of these components, whether you go into the court or City Hall or police. So built into our cost model is making improvements, and it's sort of a wayfinding thing. We see it a place for benches and bollards and flags and hopefully people and some sculpture and other kinds of things. And you can see some images around the perimeter of that slide that show where buildings meet a plaza and how the plaza is important in the design. The back side of the building, again, it's more secure. There are less windows. We've used geometry to kind of manipulate the shape somewhat to add interest and not just treat it like the back of a building, and took some clues again from some neighboring buildings. And last slide is, I think we've achieved our goals and your goals, and we pride ourselves on being good listeners, and you know, this is an efficient solution. It's we can get to a silver LEED rating, which is going to bring you payback over time. It's they're materials that will last and be durable, and I think I've shown that we respect your planning goals, and we've incorporated those into the design. It's we've worked hard to do it in such a way that it's cost effective, and we happen to think it's attractive and civic looking, and something that we'll be proud of, and I hope the citizens of Ferndale will be proud as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the table for our guests?
I guess I have a couple. The last presenters suggested that they might be able to bring their design into LEED Gold standard, certification within the budget. Is that something that's within the realm of possibilities for this design?
Anything's possible. There's a cost-benefit analysis that needs to go along with it, and our clients need to participate in that. We should make those decisions on their own, but I can't remember the range that we're in. We're in the high silver, the way it's proposed at this point. Can we bump it over by doing a few things? We certainly can, but we'd have to involve you in that dialogue.
It seems likely that if we decide to go forward with this plan, that city government's going to be quite a bit smaller by the time the courthouse is finished. One of the things that you've touted in your presentation is the adaptability of the layout. Should we reduce the court staff by 50% and perhaps bring another division of the 43rd District Court in, is this something that your layout can accommodate?
Absolutely. We've worked very hard to not put columns, load-bearing materials, mechanical shafts. Those things are positioned in such a way that it accommodates flexibility, both in the City Hall and the court building.
Okay, thanks.
Good question. Any other questions from the table?
I have a question, just because the last two times that I saw you speak, Bert, you spoke very energetically and sort of excitedly about Ferndale's identity and Ferndale's culture and your understanding of that. And the Planning Commission was extremely excited that he'd read the entire master plan and the whole new zoning ordinance. And so I wondered if you would just say a few words, because your tone was a little bit different tonight, and perhaps it's because you're in front of a different body and it's a shorter presentation. But I mean, just because I'd heard it twice, and I think it's important for this body to hear their ideas of why they thought this was a good fit for Ferndale.
Well, your planning board, we actually read through minutes. We tried to absorb as much information as we could, and actually looked at the new draft ordinance. And I'm actually a resident of Birmingham, and I've been involved in helping them through their ordinance over time. In fact, I'm on their planning board now, and so I think I may have used the term that you guys get it. I think we believe in common things, and And again, I hope our design shows that we've listened. I think I also showed some designs how other things might get developed around here and how this design will work with that as opposed to just thinking isolated and things won't change over time. So if I had more time, I'd bring more slides in, and because that's our passion. We believe in those things.
We appreciate that. It seems like you get it as well. The council did request and insist that any construction be done with a labor agreement. That is something that you're fine with and can accommodate for us. Any other further questions from council? All righty. Well, you did mention that you can hold till May. We appreciate that a lot. We didn't know this storm was going to be as stormy as it is, but this is fine looking. It's just amazing. So we appreciate the presentation.
Thank you. If I could just follow up on your comment.
If you wouldn't mind using the mic, sir, that would help us.
Just as a quick follow-up on the lead point certification, our original proposal included 41 points that we would be trying to achieve with an additional 5 potential for a total of 46, which is well within the gold range. Gold is a minimum of 39 points. So if all goes well, and again, as Bert says, it's an interactive process where we need to prioritize and price all of these different things. Gold is a very possible within what we've already accounted for.
Great, thank you. Again, thank you for your team and your efforts.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
Call to audience.
The call to audience portion is now. This is a 30-minute section of the meeting where folks are allowed to address any issues they wish that are not currently on tonight's agenda. We ask a couple of things. One, that you give us your name and address. If not verbally, then certainly write it down in the back. That you keep your remarks to under 3 minutes, and that you be respectful and respect the integrity of folks and not have any personal attacks. And I know you wouldn't, Jackie Koivu.
Good evening. My name is Jackie Koivu. I live at 1100 Pinecrest, and it's been a long time since I've been here. Things look a little different, so. Anyways, good evening, Your Honor and council members. Tonight I'm here as the 2010 Relay for Life of Ferndale chairperson. We are looking forward to our 3rd year in Ferndale and helping the American Cancer Society fight back against all cancers. Today in this economy, the number of people that have been affected by cancer has become the norm rather than the exception. Years ago, it was you never heard anybody had cancer. Now everybody has cancer, or everybody knows somebody who's been affected by it, and it's a sad statistic. So I'm here tonight to invite everyone to our upcoming events. This Friday at AJ's, we're having a Relay-a-Palooza. It's an open house information night at AJ's from 7 to 11 p.m., which will be featuring open mic entertainment, some mini ceremonies, and an opportunity for people to make luminary bags to honor, remember, and support those family and friends that have been affected by any form of cancer. And then on Thursday, March 11th at 6 o'clock p.m. is our kickoff at the Jerry Kulik Community Center. This is an opportunity for everyone to come out and learn more about the Relay for Life events that are popping up in the communities all over the country. Currently, there are over 5,000 in the U.S., and we are proud to be hosting one here in Ferndale. We will have lots of food, speakers, door prizes, as well as lots of information regarding starting a team, joining a team, sponsorship, and most importantly, an opportunity to reach out to our cancer survivors in our community to offer them and their families support and resources, as well as the families that have lost their loved ones. And lastly, I want you to mark your calendars for our Relay for Life event on June 12th and 13th from 10 a.m. to 10 a.m. at Ferndale High School. We'll have more available information once we get our schedule set and everything. And hopefully people will come out and spend either 24 minutes or 24 hours or anywhere in between and just come out and check out our event. It's a fantastic event and one of very important regarding information and resources for all of our cancer survivors and families who are affected by it. And on that note, I'd like to introduce with me is Beth Collins, who is our cancer survivor, our American Cancer Society staff partner.
Thank you and good evening. I am with the American Cancer Society in Southfield, Michigan. That's 20450 Civic Center Drive. And as Jackie said, my name is Beth Collins, and I am the community representative for Your American Cancer Society, but I get the great privilege of working with the Ferndale community specifically. And for those of you, some of you may know that the American Cancer Society is dedicated to saving lives and creating a world with less cancer and more birthdays. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank the community of Ferndale for all of their support in this first 2 years we've had here at the Relay for Life of Ferndale in the Ferndale community, and for all of the support I know we're going to get in the upcoming year for our 3rd annual relay, but specifically our planning committee volunteers, the team captains, participants, and anybody in the community that's come out and just kind of supported us the day of the event. But I also get the great privilege of recognizing that the Relay for Life of Ferndale in 2009 was recognized by our Great Lakes Division as an All-American Relay, which basically means it's a very special award. It's not given to everyone, and our Great Lakes Division is made up of Michigan and Indiana. So again, a very special award, and it recognizes relays that are really committed to outreach efforts, growth, and dedicated to the fight against cancer. So definitely a big round of applause for the Relay for Life of Ferndale and the Ferndale community in that. And so again, in its first 2 years, I just wanted to recognize that the Relay for Life of Ferndale has raised over $49,000 in the fight against cancer. So it really is truly a community that is dedicated to the fight, and I just again want to thank you for helping kind of reach and save more lives and creating a world with more birthdays. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Amanda Catherine Deal. I live at 315 West Troy. I am a teenager. There is a difference between me staying up late of my own free will and being forced to stay up even later by our neighbor Rosie O'Grady's. Like most people, I need a couple hours of wind-down time when my day is done. Because of Rosie's, I can't start my wind-down routine until 2:30 in the morning. My mother and I had difficulty with our neighbor on the other side with their playing of loud music past 10 p.m. Because of that, we came to learn that 10 p.m. was the starting of quiet hours. Rosie starts their noise at 10 p.m. They do this Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights, and they started in August. I was able to deal with this because I don't have college classes Friday or over the weekend, so being kept up on Thursday night wasn't that big an issue. But why I am here before you this evening is because the last straw was last Wednesday, when they pulled the 10 to 2 a.m. and louder than usual. I was unable to get up the next morning for classes. The body requires sleep, and when that is denied, it craves for food as a source of energy to keep it up. Since I am being kept up and unable to sleep, I go to eating. But when I eat late in the evenings, my stomach gets upset or I wake up ill. The constant battery of bass coming from Rosie's gets into the nerves. I don't know the exact science, but I know it messes with the nerves to cause irritability, restlessness, and headaches, all of which have become apparent in my mother and I. We have frequently woken up with severe headaches. I've recently proven to my mother that what's coming from Rosie's isn't what we're hearing, but what we're feeling. How I prove this? There's generally no bass control on TVs. I know ours doesn't have it. I had a DVD on that was playing hip-hop dance music. I turned the volume all the way down and then muted it. We were still able to hear the bass line of the music. I pointed out that the bass has no sound, it vibrates through the ground. I had noticed this a while ago, so to stop my mother's complaining, I moved her into my room on the opposite corner from Rosie's. This worked in that she can't hear it anymore, but as we've established, she can still feel it. Even before last Wednesday, my mother requested a police officer to stand in our living room where I sleep. When she hung up, I asked if they were coming in a police car. She said, "I assume so," and I said, "That's stupid." Sure enough, when he arrived, Rosie's had turned it down. He said he could still hear something, but that something is a little something compared to what we experience no less than 3 times a week. All I ask is with the money I've heard he's put into his establishment, he must have a state-of-the-art music system with bass control. I ask just that the bass is turned down and the music is not turned up. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Deal.
And if you guys want copies.
Sure. Have you spoken to Mr. Kramer at all, or to Beth, the manager?
Me not personally, but there have been many phone calls to the establishment requesting that it's been turned down.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Deal.
Good evening. Good evening. Ann Heller, 1024 Leroy, speaking as Board President of Fern Care. Just to say that on Monday, February 15, we have an event at Maria's. We have a romantic opera and classical music evening for Valentine's Day. And Maria's has been so, we are so honored that they're going to host it. They are not open, by the way, on this night, and the wait staff gladly agreed to come in to support the fundraiser. Heidi Schmidt is going to sing for us, and she's a Juilliard-trained singer. And what makes it really special for us is that besides being an opera singer, she's also a medical student. So what a great combination for Fern Care. And the other is Hans Barbet, who is a classic pianist who lives in our sister city in Hazel Park. And his group has performed for us here in Ferndale and also at Phoenix Cafe there. It's going to be Monday, February 15, 6 to 9 p.m. Tickets are $50 a piece and available on our website, www.ferncare.org. And we have a little PayPal button, and that's how you can purchase tickets. So please, I invite you on Monday the 15th. Thank you.
It's President's Day, too.
Yes.
Holiday.
Also. Yes, it is. Yes.
Very good, Ms. Heller. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Dan Martin, and I'm at 1447 West Hazelhurst. And I'm here tonight on behalf of the Ferndale Community Foundation. We have our second annual Taste of Ferndale coming up on Tuesday, February 16th. This is a Mardi Gras themed party at Villanova Restaurant from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. We're going to have 14 businesses feature their food and beverages at this event, including Villanova, House Bayou, Emery Webb, Anita's Kitchen, Apple Fritters, Inyo, Rosie O'Grady's, Diablo's Tex-Mex, which isn't even open yet, but it's a great opportunity to preview it, Como's Pizza Place, Bee Nectar Meadery, and Chirazo Coffee. We'll also have a silent auction and cash bar, and in addition, we'll have live music there as well. Tickets are $30, and they're available either through our website, which is www.ferndaleCommunityFoundation.org, or from the City Manager's Office or the DDA, or you can give me a call, 248-672-4067. This is a fantastic event and a great time, so I really encourage you to attend.
Mr. Martin, that's Tuesday the 16th?
Tuesday, February 16th, Mardi Gras.
Fat Tuesday.
Fat Tuesday.
So the day after we go to Maria's and support Fern Care.
It is the social week. You can do your opera on Monday and come Mardi Gras on Tuesday.
Villanova. Very nice place. $30, you get to sample all of those restaurants?
Absolutely.
What a deal.
Yep.
I'll be there.
Great. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Chris Hughes from the Ferndale DDA, Communications and Marketing. It's going to be, after all that eating, you'll have an opportunity to walk around town on third Thursday, February 18th. Our theme this month is I Love Downtown Ferndale. So the merchants will be extending a warm welcome to everybody, and we're going to have hearts for Haiti, and if you show your love, like wear something that says Ferndale on it, many of the merchants will be giving discounts. So check the downtownferndale.com website and find out what's going on at all the different merchants. I'd also like to invite you, the council, to the 10th anniversary of Main Street, Oakland County. They're going to be having a pep rally, and you better be peppy because it's at 9 a.m. on February 18th. But Brooks Patterson will be there, so you'll be able to get your banter going early and have a good time celebrating 10 years of Oakland County, which of course we are a part of, and that's how we are qualified for the GAMSA award. He's a good buddy. And finally, last but not least, we want to thank everybody for coming out last week. We had very well attended, and we were pleased with the turnout for the 48220 parking forums we had. We gathered a lot of information. We've done an online survey, and if anybody continues to have input on this, we will be happy to take it and compile it, and we'll be back here at your next city council meeting with the presentation. So that's it from the DDA this week. Come out for third Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes.
Howdy, Dennis August, 1550 Spencer. I've got a question. When the city made up the signs for the snow removal, why didn't they just go ahead and just say no parking on the streets? There's a lot of people in the city of Ferndale that aren't parking in their driveways, and now I see the city workers can't get up and down the streets now because the plows are so wide. You know, and I mean, 4 inches of snow, you know, sure, you know, that ain't very much, but it can make quite a mess. But I mean, we already have something that's gone back a lot farther back, and that is people who don't have driveways have had to have permits or stickers on their cars, okay? Now, the city of Ferndale wouldn't be the first city to eliminate parking on the streets and make people park in their driveways. I bring this up because here we are talking about the budget. DPW, City of Ferndale, the police department, the fire department, okay? This would make everybody's job a lot easier with a skeleton crew, okay? And I mean, it may be kind of sounding kind of harsh to some people, but, you know, when these people got room for 4 or 5 cars in their driveway and they're parking out on the street, you know, I can't afford no-fault insurance. You know, you get hit, we all pay. It was like that before no fault, but no fault just added insult to injury. You know, but I mean, it's just, I think the city should have done just a little bit more and gone one step further and just eliminated the parking. And this would have made it easier for cleaning up the streets in the fall. And that, you know, and I mean, I park on the streets when the weather's nice, but I take and pull all my vehicles off. I got room in my driveway to handle my 3 vehicles. And none of them, well, one's a smaller one, but the other 2 are pretty large, a van and a pickup truck. You know, and I pull my stuff off the street so that way the city can come by and plow in front of my house. That's what I pay my taxes for, and that. But lo and behold, somebody will park in front there, and then next thing you know, I got a mess because somebody else just doesn't care. You know, this would help out the police department because the chief has said he just doesn't have the manpower to run up and down these streets here. Ferndale ain't that big a city, but it's got a lot of streets in it. Okay? And I can see his point of view. City council's built the downtown area up, made it pretty robust. I can drive down Woodward Avenue on a Friday night and find 3 police officers, people pulled over and their lights going. You know, we need our police department, we need our fire department, and we would need them in the neighborhoods. And this would just make it a little easier, make it easier on them if we're going to have to eliminate some police officers, which I would not want to see happen. But this would just make it easier on everybody. That's my thoughts.
Thank you. Very timely. We're expecting 4 to 6 inches of snow tomorrow. Folks, please remember to move your car off the street during a snow emergency. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Len Paquette. I'm a labor rep with the Fraternal Order of Police. We're kind of the new kids in town. We just took over the representation of the police department in August and had our first negotiations meeting in November. I had a chance to meet a few of you at the last council meeting. I look forward to meeting the rest of you. Just by way of background, I'm a 20-year police officer with the city of Taylor, where I was a supervisor and union president there, and have been employed by the Fraternal Order of Police out of Lansing for the last couple years. The reason I come before you tonight is certainly not to negotiate a contract, but to ask a few questions, reference your building project and some things that came up at the last council meeting, which I attended. Well, I kind of share your excitement about building a new building here. I was part of the building projects in Taylor in the late 90s, where we built almost an entirely new city hall and court system. And I was actually the liaison with the police group in conjunction with the architects and the general contractor. So I share your excitement, but I also share your trepidation with the fact that you're looking at some budget constraints by the fact that, as we all know, the cities throughout Michigan are under greatly reduced budgets now because of the foreclosures and the economic conditions that we are all facing in all the cities. But a couple of questions came up. There was a brochure or a flyer that was handed out by somebody that was discussed at the last council meeting. And basically my questions are just a few, but I would probably address them to you, Mr. Bruner. First of all, do you have an estimate of what the new building project will cost?
Yes. You're going to run out of your 3 minutes, though, before I answer your question, so I suggest maybe we take the questions and answers offline sometime next week.
Well, I don't think they'd be that long. It's like you just get a couple simple answers.
$9 million.
About $9 million?
For all 3 phases.
Okay, for all 3 phases?
Yep.
And that's a decision that you have to make if you build police or police and fire or courthouse separately?
Correct.
Do you plan on floating a bond, or is there millage proposed, or?
Bond, yes. Millage, no.
Well, bond, yes, and millage, no?
Yep.
Okay. And some of the layoffs that were discussed and were brought forward were in the area of 20%. Do you anticipate that that would go across equally in all departments?
No, I do not.
Or would you give some preference to police and fire?
When I make my budget recommendations, it won't be across the board cuts. Every department of city government will be affected, but some more than others.
Okay. And do you have any idea of how many people in the police department would be affected?
Not at this time.
Not at this time. Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time tonight.
Lynn, before you leave the podium there, as you know, if the state fully funded our state shared revenue, we wouldn't have any of these discussions.
Right.
And so I just wondered, what is the FOP's progress at getting the Republican Senate to fully fund those?
Well, that's a good question, and I would probably have to defer that to our Director of Labor Services, Randy Mason. But I can tell you that we work with a firm in Lansing that does a lot of our lobbying for us, and we're attempting to get all those issues addressed because it is an economic concern that we face all over the state. I represent police departments on the eastern side of the state of Michigan, from the Ohio border up into the UP, and it's a problem that we're facing everywhere.
One of the things that really troubled me, I was speaking with House Speaker Andy Dillon, is that everyone, shows up at City Hall when we start talking about cuts.
Sure.
But of course, nobody shows up in Lansing when they start talking about cutting state shared revenue.
Right.
If our state shared revenue was where it was supposed to be and had never been cut from the, the statutory amounts, we'd have several $1 million more in our budget.
I couldn't agree more.
And we'd have, great surpluses. Right. So please let us know what we can do to
Well,
coordinate our message with the FOP
glad
so
to
that we can
forward
get
that
that, coordinated activity.
Sure.
And hopefully we can energize, the folks that we have influence over, and you can do your folks, because, again, Andy Dillon was just saying that nobody showed up. Nobody cared at Lansing when they started talking, or very minimal amounts of folks did.
Well, and again, I don't want to address the exact things that happened because I'm not aware of them. It's not my function. But I do know one of our lobbyists, Sandy Lewis, at our last meeting talked about it, and I don't know what meetings they attended, but I know they were very much in support of that, and the FOP stands firmly behind that. And just to say one of the things to all of you folks, and I know some of you are new people, some of the people I met last week, Melanie, I know that you're new and have attended a lot of schooling and are very concerned about the state of affairs, as I'm sure all of you are in the city of Ferndale. We don't come as a union. We're a different type of union. We're not coming here to argue and to be in opposition to the things that you're doing. We're coming here to try to work with you and with your city council, and that's one of the reasons I'm here tonight. It's one of the reasons I came last week, because we look forward to helping you resolve these issues as easily as possible.
Perfect.
Great.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, folks need to know that we're not going to have any idea of any type of layoff numbers, if any, until we get through the first several phases of our budget work, which includes voluntary retirements, negotiations with the labor unions, and other budget cuts. So that's important. Yes, sir.
Good evening. Real quick, my name is Rich Long. I've been here several times before. I'm here to talk about the 48220 parking forums. I live at 262 West Troy, a building that has frontage on 9 Mile, one of 2 apartment buildings that are in the heart of downtown between Allen and Woodward. Mr. Bruner was at the forum that I attended Saturday, but in light of the fact that the rest of you were not there, I'm sure you were at other ones. Oh, you were there, I'm sorry, Melanie. But I'd just like to reiterate a point that I made.
Monday, I did Monday,
Yeah.
sorry. Go ahead.
A point that I made was that the DDA has, part of its goal is to encourage mixed use and density. And when you have residents already living downtown, I think you want to kind of recognize that they are neighbors. My point that I brought up was that we are in a unique boat, and we are a unique class of resident because we are eyes and ears downtown. We shop downtown. We choose to live that downtown lifestyle. I just want to remind everyone that as you consider whatever proposals that you receive from the DDA in terms of parking, you keep in mind that we are neighbors and residents and a sort of a unique class. And parking affects us differently because we do not have driveways, we do not have dedicated parking, just as the businesses do not. We do not either. So.
Absolutely.
Thank
you. Thank you very much. Any other folks wish to take advantage of our called audience? Now is the time. We have just about 5 more minutes. So a couple more folks. Hey.
I'm Derek Peters at 540 Leroy. Previous meeting, Councilman Lennon said that there was an anonymous flyer sent out and that you really couldn't speak to anyone there specifically because it was anonymous. So I started a Facebook group, Ferndale for Change, for anyone who's interested in doing just organizing, maybe venting, and acting to help move Ferndale in practical manners. So please, if you could tell your fellow residents just about it, and maybe we can just, I really want to organize and to help our residents have a voice that we can pinpoint instead of being anonymous. Thank you.
Sure. As soon as I figure out how to get on Facebook, I'll take a look.
I'll help you.
I've offered. I've tried.
Thanks, Derek. You just told about 6,000 people because folks watch it on cable. So, like you do, Ferndale for Change, Facebook. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Tamika Brooks. I'm speaking on behalf of Local 998. I'm the chairperson. I'm also an employee of the Ferndale Police Department. Just very briefly, I'd like to direct this to the city manager. I know that recommendations have not been made as of yet for layoffs, but what I want to bring to your attention, and it is hearsay on my part, but if you would speak to some of the leaders, your department heads, and tell them that those recommendations have not been made yet. There is information that is being given to employees in my unit, and I don't know about others, plans being made, people being told where they would be bumped to, or names being taken off of phone directories at this point. And so if you would just share with your department heads until those recommendations are made, if they could just hold their tongues, if it's in fact so. Thank you.
Thank you. Good point. Mr. Bruner, you got that? I mean, of course you did. You heard
Yeah,
it.
and I mean, let me address this directly because there's a lot going on behind the scenes right now. I was in the midst of preparing those budget recommendations 2 weeks ago, and due to circumstances beyond my control, like the anonymous flyer, I spent a lot more time dealing with other things that week than dealing with the budget. And then unfortunately last Monday, the finance director's mother died, which put me at a little bit of a disadvantage in putting together budget recommendations in her absence. So it is my intent to prepare those budget recommendations as quickly as possibly, but as accurately as possible. And right now I'm trying to balance speed and accuracy, and I want to err on the side of accuracy so that when that plan is put together and we do sit down with our union leaders and start to talk about that plan, that the plan isn't changing because we're finding out that there were problems with it. So, you know, I'll get something out formally as soon as I can, but I want to make sure it's accurate first.
Thanks, Mr. Bruner.
You know, I
Go
think
ahead.
Ms. Brooks is right. I have heard that too, but like I said, it is hearsay. But the department heads have to realize this body makes the final decision on everything. Department heads don't do that. You don't tell people where they're going and what jobs are being eliminated. We haven't
Correct.
got to that point yet.
Not even close. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. We are out of time for the public speaks called audience portion of the meeting. Thank you. If there are folks who still wish to speak publicly, we can bring this back after the final agenda items. Madam Clerk, next, please.
We are at the consent agenda. Item A, approval of the minutes of the regular and special meetings held January 25th, 2010. Item B, approval of the end-user license agreement by and between Elster Amco Water Incorporated and the City of Ferndale for system software used in the $1,896,532 fixed network data collection system water meter replacement program. Item C, approval to adopt a resolution of condolence for the family of Margaret Reddy. And D, approval of the bills and payrolls as certified by the city manager to be paid subject to review by the Council Finance Committee.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Well done. Anybody wish to pull any of those three items from the consent agenda? Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to pull item C, just so that we can read it aloud as we generally do for condolence resolutions.
Item C
Yeah, item C as in cat.
of the consent agenda?
Yes.
All right.
Wait, item C? Is item C the consent?
We added an amended item under the regular agenda, C.
I'm sorry. I'm looking at the one that's currently online, and it's item number C. But what I would like to pull, whatever letter it is the resolution of condolence for Jane Marie's mother.
And I don't even have that, so.
It's 6C
it is.
on the amended agenda.
I appreciate that. Consider it pulled. It's not on my agenda for some reason, so please remind me.
Sure thing.
Then a motion to adopt the rest of the consent agenda, please.
So moved.
Seconded by Piana, motion by Baker to adopt the consent agenda with pulling the item C on the new agenda. Madam Clerk?
Council members Galloway?
Yes.
Lennon is absent. Piana?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
And Mayor Covey.
Yes, as well. Thank you. Next item, Madam Clerk.
Consideration of DEA vehicle purchase.
Chief, condolence thing.
Good evening, Your Honor. What you have before you is a pretty straightforward request to replace a 2006 Dodge Caravan with 106,000 miles on it that has deemed nearly unserviceable by our mechanic, who recommends its replacement. And we have been able to secure a bid of $22,830 for a replacement vehicle, being a 2010 Ford Explorer, which is about $11,000 off of list due to it being a state bid item. The purchase would be made through the drug forfeiture account, which is more than adequately expended or full for this expenditure, and it would be for the DEA officer who generates way more than that in terms of returns through drug forfeiture monies.
Thank you, Chief. Request for information?
I have one.
Go ahead, Councilwoman.
Hi, Chief. Could you tell us a little bit about the drug forfeiture money that we get and what it can be spent on and what it cannot be spent on?
Well, the drug, there's a difference between state and federal. Federal forfeitures are much more liberal. And in fact, from the federal account, we do pay for another officer, as well as, generally speaking, forfeiture monies must be spent for things directed in the fight against drugs, but our forfeiture account is lucrative enough that we have been able to pay for nearly every piece of equipment during the time I've been chief through the forfeiture account. That includes things like guns, vests, automobiles, a body, SWAT weapons, things that generally take the pressure off the general fund.
So the money comes in two pots. The federal money can and is being used to help pay for an officer, but the other money it needs to pay for stuff.
I'm unsure exactly of the details of the two, but our federal side is much larger than the state side.
Chief, a couple questions. This DEA vehicle replaces a 4-year-old vehicle currently being used by our DEA officer. What exactly is this for? Undercover operations, going to and from work, and what use is it put towards?
The DEA mission right now is largely a surveillance mission, and they generally chase larger shipments than someone like NET. They don't do like street buys and things like that. They do, well, with the risk of giving away their secrets, but they chase the results of federal wiretaps and larger shipments coming in from Mexico and things like that. Like, it wouldn't be unusual for us to follow a semi-truck and things like that for interdiction purposes. It's not like a pursuit vehicle or anything like that. It's almost strictly a surveillance vehicle.
And is the vehicle that we're using now is going to make it till we get through the budget process? Or my understanding is that some of the concept teams positions, may be jeopardized by our budget cutting process. I wonder if it wouldn't be prudent to put this on hold for a little while to see if it's still going to be needed after we get through the budget process.
As far as the mechanical condition, 100, that's a lot of miles on a vehicle that we tend to use ruggedly. I can tell you that as we face this budget thing, DEA will be one of the ones that we seek to keep because it does generate so much money. But yeah, I can't tell you how long a caravan might last, but this was based on a recommendation from our mechanic who was having trouble keeping the thing rolling. So
if we were to get rid of any of the concept teams, the DEA officer would not be one of those that you would select or recommend.
Depends on how deep we go, right. But it would be one. It would be one that I would probably seek to be. It would probably be the last, if not the last, very close to the last one that I would encourage council to keep, just simply because not only does it generate forfeiture funds, but it gives us our federal jurisdiction. I mean, this last gang thing, we would not have caught those guys without our federal connections, including the marshals and the DEA agents. Again, it just gives us a lot more resources at hand, and I count it as a very valuable tool. And we have if I need 50 DEA agents by virtue of our membership there, I can get them at a moment's notice. So it would be, I mean, I know where we're at on the budget thing. I'm well aware of that. But as we move through the process, this would be one of the concepts that I would seek to keep.
I have some questions. I had one, then to you, Melanie. Where is the DEA officer based? In other words, where does
Detroit.
He or she go to work? They go to Detroit?
Well, they go to their office quite a bit. It's downtown, but they don't necessarily do it like a police station. They don't necessarily go there like a police station and get briefed and things like that, but that's where their office is.
Okay, Chief. I'll let Councilman Piana, and then if I have any more. Thanks.
I have a lot of newbie questions, so if you allow me those. Can you go over a little bit about the condition of the vehicle? Your summary and background here doesn't really talk about what condition it is in, so for me to say or to understand why you need a new vehicle, I feel like there's some missing information for me. And then can you talk about what is heavy use and what would be light use? Can you talk about the comparison between the vehicle, just for my understanding?
Well, I can tell you that I've never driven this car, but I can tell you that 106,000 miles in something that, in a surveillance-type environment, this car might idle for a day and a half with the air conditioner running while people are watching, and then it might have to speed down the road to keep up with somebody in a surveillance mode. Surveillance doesn't always mean sitting there. We do it in teams, usually 2 to 4 cars, and we leapfrog and move along quite, and like our police cars, we would never run a police car more than 100,000 miles unless we absolutely had to. At some point, the front ends and brakes and things like that just become unserviceable. I know a little bit about Dodge Caravans, and they're certainly not designed for this type of use. And I don't know any better mechanic than Mike, and we're basing this really on his recommendation.
Okay, so basically I've heard the threshold for any police vehicle is 100,000 miles, and then it gets put on a slate for replacement?
Yes, 100,000 would be, even for a Crown Vic, is a lot. We have, but very rarely.
Okay, and then does, other than the DEA, does anybody else from the police department use this vehicle, or is it specifically just for the DEA?
Specifically for
the
DEA.
And it's used every day?
Mm-hmm. Every day he works, yes.
Okay.
It can be rotated on that team. Everyone has a car, but, yeah.
Okay.
Is that it, Councilwoman?
Yes, got all my questions answered.
I just have two more, Chief. How many vehicles does the police department have now altogether? We have
I think 14.
14? Okay. And I know I've asked before about the Hummer. I don't know why it causes me consternation, but we still have a Hummer, and what is that used for?
Just for general running around and to have a 4x4 on hand.
General, who runs around generally? What does that mean, running around generally?
Detectives use it for whatever they need to do in terms of moving around, and that's another car we got for free. So we think it's valuable to have another 4x4 on hand just in case we need to move around in the snow.
Okay. And do we ever sell these? Or what happens? How do you know when you have too many vehicles, or if it would be better to get rid of some, or is the more vehicles we have, the better?
No, if we have excessive vehicles, we get rid of them. We used to rotate. We're now that we're not keeping them in the fleet, although we do have nothing but Tauruses now. Which wouldn't be a bad idea to run them through the fleet. But they get to be 5, 6 years old, and they wear out like anything else. But a Taurus in our detective bureau, when it's used just for seeking, going back and forth to Pontiac or serving paper and things like that, that car will last a long time. We have several that are 5 and 6 years old.
All right.
I have another question.
Go ahead.
Do you believe, we just asked 2 major architectural firms to delay their cost of $9 million for another 3 months, 90 days. Do you think Mr. Edgeford would be able to do that if we tabled this just to get some more information? I support making sure that the police department has the appropriate equipment to do their job.
It depends on how the bid is written. If the bid expires, then probably not. It's really not. If it's on a state bid basis, we're certainly glad to give Ed Schmidt the business, but depending on how the bid is written, it could expire. I think that's how. I haven't seen the bid itself, but depending on how that bid is, well, it says the quote expires February 18th, so I imagine that's the way the bid's written. So after the 18th, we would see, then the state rebids everything, and
Right.
we might be faced with a little, bigger cost.
All right. Now anything else? I have one more, and then I'm done. Chief, this $22,000 to buy this new truck, could we keep that instead and use it to supplement the general fund budget so that we might be able to not lay off a portion of a staff person?
No.
No?
You can't use, you can't just infuse forfeiture money into the general fund now.
But could it go to other expenses around supplies and materials, which then that funding could go to staff?
We can buy, like we always have, equipment and a body with forfeiture funds, but, you know, we have a very good, healthy forfeiture fund at this point.
All right.
And, you know, this is just another piece of equipment that we need to do the job.
Thanks, Chief. All right. Any other questions? If not, is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the replacement of the DEA vehicle with the purchase of a 2010 four-door 4x4 Ford Explorer for a cost of $22,830 from the drug forfeiture fund from Ed Schmidt Ford.
Support.
Motion made, seconded. Lennon, Baker. Discussion? Madam Clerk.
Council members Lennon?
Yes.
Piana?
Yes.
Baker? Yes. Galloway?
Yes.
And Mayor Covey.
Yes. Passes. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you very much, Your Honor.
Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Consideration of Preserve America Wayfinding Bid Award.
Christine, will you be introducing for us?
Yes, and I will introduce Christina Shepard-Decius, Ferndale DDA Executive Director. This is actually not for a bid award. This is actually for approval of design plan and the scope of work that we're going to send out for bid. So just to get that straight, this is actually for the first phase of signage and cultural tourism component for the Preserve America project. First off, I wanted to really thank our advisory committee, who has been a strong component for putting all this work together, including City Manager Bob Bruner, and at times, Kate Baker, you were early on in the planning phases of it, as well as Mayor Covey. Roger Schmidt, representing the Ferndale Historical Society as president, and Nicole Clopedlo of Woodward Avenue Action Association, Stacy Tobar of the DDA Board of Directors and Design Committee Chairperson, Jerome Raska of Blooms by JR Design, and Jeff White of J. White Photography. This advisory committee has been meeting for over a year and a half in the planning process. First was just to get the RFP out for our design consultants. The design consultant here tonight, the Lakota Group, has been working over the last couple months in putting together the design plan, the master plan for the city of Ferndale for wayfinding and cultural tourism. As part of the Preserve America grant, we have a deadline of August 30th to complete the first phase of signage and wayfinding, as well as obviously the overall plan. I think what was a great benefit for the Preserve America project is that through finding out more about our culture and promoting our culture, we are also then able to develop this master plan that will carry us into the future. And knowing as we move forward with budgets that the only thing that will come forward to you in the future based on the bid is really for this phase one. But we wanted to make sure that as you move on with year after year budget items, that you begin to look at how the city may or may not incorporate some of these elements into your overall plans and your planning. So without much further ado, I want to go into the design, and then we can answer additional questions regarding the scope of work after that.
Thanks.
Good evening. My name is Daniel Grove with the Lakota Group, and as Christina introduced, we were the lead consultant for this design project. And just to kind of reestablish, I think it's very important to understand that this is I think, a great project that the Preserve America grant is paying for the design of this master plan and this first phase. So you end up with kind of two products at the same time. One is something that's going to be in the ground and hopefully generate some excitement and further the growth and beautification of your downtown, but also a master plan that you can choose to use, hopefully choose to use as time goes on, as funds are available, as projects happen, to structure and guide future signage throughout the city. And what I'm going to do is just briefly go through the study, the process, and then the kind of the final product of what we came up with, and take any questions that you have. So if we go to the first slide. Our overall team was comprised of 3 groups. Once again, I represent the Lakota group. We do landscape architecture, urban planning, historic preservation, and community relations. And we were joined by Quill Communications that handles graphic design and multimedia solutions. They have their own component of this process, which is ongoing right now, having to do with self-guided cultural tours, online tours. That's something that will be rolling out in a couple months. And then we were also fortunate to be joined by Keydorf Preservation Consulting. Christine Keydorf has huge experience in interpretive writing, historic research, and she was able to help us narrow down kind of our first choice of historic and cultural sites and help us do some interpretive writing that will show up in the signs that are going to get built. Really, overall, we've got several goals that we were trying to achieve through this process. Clearly signage, wayfinding, what are we trying to do? One, identify the city at its borders. You've got signage down throughout the city, but we want to create an identity, a character, something that really builds off of the growth that you've experienced and the change in cultural character. We want to kind of enhance and promote that special identity throughout the downtown, throughout the city, through signage. Clearly direct people to key locations and destinations, provide this level of information, this historic and cultural interpretive information, so that as you have visitors, they want to know more about the city, more about the history, more about the buildings, provide opportunities for that. Build on the downtown streetscape, create through the directional and wayfinding safer roadways, have people making informed choices at the right points in time, and then also as anywhere that we can incorporate sustainable and green technologies into this program. Real briefly, the process that we went through, building off of everything that Christina mentioned, we started out in October and had our kind of analysis and program development. We had some great stakeholder interviews. Our goal really was to try to get a sense of the community, the character, the goals of the design. We wanted the design not just to be something we picked out of a catalog. We wanted it to be very unique and custom to Ferndale and reflect the identity of Ferndale. We went, the second phase is that cultural component development. Our team started developing these online walking tours, self-guided tours that once again will be part of a different phase of the program. It's not part of what I'm really covering tonight. And then phase 3, we went into our system design development. So we're starting to flesh out what the wayfinding system is, what the designs were. We came up with 4 different concepts which were presented at an open house in mid-December. I know a couple of you attended that, and we appreciated all the input from the public. That helped us narrow it down to the preferred design, which we've refined. We presented at a public workshop in mid-January, and then we've now worked into our master plan. And then, as Christina mentioned, the goal is that we want to get this master plan approved and then create documents to be bid on for this first phase to get built by August. Just a brief overview of the stakeholder input. Really, what we heard from the community, the different interest groups that we talked to, is that we need to, what we have in the signage needs to really express the unique character of Ferndale. That we heard that came through a lot of pride, not only in the city, the downtown, the businesses. We needed to reflect that through what we were doing. We wanted to also embrace the history and architecture of the community that came through strongly throughout the process. We wanted the signs to reflect the excitement and the vibrancy of the community. And then clearly there's specific goals in terms of directing visitors to parking, directing them to locations, getting them out of the cars, walking around, experiencing the downtown, and experiencing other locations throughout the city. And also, just through these conversations, we really got a sense of what were the key buildings, what were the key businesses, and then, helped identify unique cultural stories and events and sites that helped influence where we put kind of the first thoughts in terms of cultural and historic signage. And that led to this first round of historic resources and interpretive signage. We went through a selection process where an initial list was generated based on the steering committee input and the stakeholder input. And this list was also we got lots of support and volunteer hours from the Ferndale Historical Society, which helped us to flesh out this list. From that, 10 preferred locations were selected by the DDA Design Committee, and these locations were both historic and cultural reasons, trying to get the unique stories out to visitors of what makes Ferndale special. And there was a desire to highlight a range of interesting stories, not just buildings that are still there today, but what's been lost, what's been modified, and so that somebody can get a complete picture of the city and what's occurred. The final locations were confirmed by the steering committee, and then this is just the first list. As any future phases could build on this list. So the list, just so you're aware, was the Ferndale School and Library on 9 Mile, just a couple doors to our west. The First Church, Ferndale Evangelical, which is across the street, basically from the school. Wabi Bank on 9 Mile west of Woodward. 9 Mile and Pioneer Apartments. The Magic Bag Theater on Woodward, Wentmore's, the U.S. Post Office, the Elks Building, which was the American State Bank originally, Spalding and Curtin Funeral Home, and then kind of a collection of 3 dime stores where Woolworths, Kresge's, and Nesman Brothers. So that was kind of this preliminary list. All of these sites have been researched and had interpretive text written up for them, and folded into this signage project. At the same time, we did a signage audit where we went through the community. We had help from the DPW to identify all the different signs that are currently out there to help us understand what's working, what's not. We've kind of lumped these into different categories. I'll just briefly hit this because I know that it's already a long night and we want to keep this to a limit. But clearly there's major identity features, things throughout the city that really announce Ferndale. We want to build on that. We don't want to tear everything down. I think that clearly the work that's been done at the 9 Mile Woodward intersection is very successful. So we want to design something that can work with the existing designs. The next slide, we talk about the minor identity. These are the signs that are kind of at your lesser gateways, side streets coming off of 8 Mile or 9 Mile at the east and west borders, but just something, a smaller sign that welcomes people to Ferndale. A lot of these are in very good locations, but if we can do something new to add on to this. The next slide is public buildings, identification of public buildings. A lot of these are larger signs. You have changeable information on them. But, the look and the style, we want to see if you can see just from the ones that we showed pictures of, there's a lot of variety. We want to see if we can create something that's unique and consistently applied throughout the city. The next slide would be identification of public parks. Once again, there's a range of what's out there, but something that we can build on. Next, school buildings. School district clearly not in the same group, but we wanted to be comprehensive with the way that we looked at this program, and so build on, look at what's existing out there in terms of school identification signs. Parking lots are critical, especially with the desire to direct people to parking and have them understand the hours and the rates. Next slide. District signs, there's not too much in terms of district. There's some commerce center signs that are more acting as directories, but you don't have any signs out there that establish business districts, historic districts, and I think that there's a role for those in the future. Then we start to get into directional signs, and you see a wide range of these out in the city right now. Not all of them are designed the same. You've got green, blue, white, brown, different signs, different sizes, and there's no combining of these. So if you're trying to clearly identify and direct people to locations, I think that there's an ability to be more consistent and be more crisp and clean and clear about how you direct people to key locations. And then additionally, you've got informational and interpretive signage in terms of historic plaques and other information. So we took all this, we mapped it to understand what's there, what's missing, is it in the right location. From there, we went to the next stage of doing wayfinding analysis and understanding where your major routes through into around the city are, where your bike routes are, where your key intersections are, where the decision points need to occur if somebody is going to move through. And we also mapped what we call the activity generators. So the public buildings, the parks, the key places that visitors and residents may be going to help us understand how people are getting there and where we should be providing them this information and directing them. And then that led to our wayfinding plan. So our wayfinding plan is kind of a comprehensive listing of where we see signs being located in the future. Clearly, we're talking hundreds of new signs, not something that would be ever done in a short period of time. But once again, we see this as the roadmap. If you have funds, if you get grant money, when the possibilities come up, this is the roadmap we think that should be followed and where signs should be placed. And then we went into our design of what those signs should look at. The preferred theme that came out of the community process was based around an idea that we had. We looked at the historic photos. We looked at a lot of different things throughout the community for inspiration, and the one that really seemed to resonate with the people who participated in our public workshops was an idea based off of the old Radio City sign. It's a very dramatic element. Has some Art Deco characteristics. There's the Federal Department Store adjacent, which had a very similar sign, but they reversed from kind of a light on dark to a dark on light. But also, the vertical nature, the look of it, and how it was anchored, and then the night lighting were all important things that we took inspiration from towards our design. And so from that, I'll just walk you briefly through the series of designs that we came up with. We felt that clearly there needs to be a major identity sign. We see this as being in Woodward Avenue on the north and south ends as you come into the community, establishing Ferndale, establishing identity, and starting to build that character. At the lesser entries, we see a minor directional. This would be narrower. It gives us the ability to put this in city-controlled right-of-ways and in tighter site constraints where you don't have the median of Woodward Avenue to build from. We've got a graphic just showing what the night lighting on that could be. We thought that all these, a lot of these signs could be lit up at night for a dramatic effect, really kind of create some identity. The next sign is then our public buildings, whether this is the school, the city hall, a park. So a lower monument sign that establishes the building and the address. We saw that if there was a need for changeable information instead of doing switch out plastic lettering, if there was a possibility to integrate an LED cabinet where you can program it and change it over time, it may be easier to maintain and more attractive. We've seen things done very poorly with LED signs, but we think that this could be integrated very well. The one that we showed is 11 inches tall, so you're able to get either a graphic or 10-inch text or 2 rows of 5-inch text, so it provides a lot of flexibility. We also understood that there's going to be sites where you don't need that kind of changeable information. So the next slide shows where you might have just additional lines of of information, hours, and you know, other details if you don't need the LED panel. Once again, in the upper right-hand corner, just a graphic of what that could look like lit up at night. And then on the right, we showed some different examples throughout the report and in the slideshow of other graphic options if there was a desire to create a little bit different look on some of these signs, where you could do you know, a historic photo kind of etched into the metal, or you could do, the previous slide I forgot to mention showed color coding. If you wanted to color code your different uses, have all the municipal buildings have one color, have the schools be a different color, have the parks be a different color. So it's just as a concept, as an alternate really right now. The last sign that we showed for identification of public buildings was a smaller sign. If you had a lesser use or a smaller site where you could do just a narrower, smaller sign. And there was another concept that came up through the public workshops of putting a graphic image in the background instead of like a large photo that would be in the background that would relate to the use at that site. The next slide would be our concept for public parking, identifying the parking lot, the hours, and other information. We also see it as an opportunity that if you if you switch to from a can you back up? If you switch to more of a pay and display type function instead of having meters, you would have the ability to incorporate on the back side facing the parking lot. You could have that pay and display meter built into the sign if you wanted to. In terms of a district sign, we see this as being a smaller sign, like a blade-mounted sign that could, once again, identify a historic district or the downtown Ferndale. It could have a little bit more character to it if you wanted it to match any kind of branding initiatives. Then we get into our directional signs. We see Woodward Avenue as being a key route to direct people from off of Woodward Avenue onto 9 Mile towards City Hall, towards the downtown. And we need to play by different rules when we design on Woodward Avenue due to MDOT restrictions. So this gets a little tricky in terms of what we're allowed to do, where we're allowed to place the signs, but we think it's doable. We think it's something that's going to be important in the future to get people into the community. Additionally, we designed a parking sign. Really needs to meet the requirements laid out by MDOT, and it's pretty similar to the sign that the parking directional signs you have out there. They just don't allow for a lot of freedom to do creative designs. As we get down to your local roadways, the directional sign, we have a little bit more flexibility to work with. We can get a little bit more information on it, keep the size to a reasonable, keep it to a reasonable size, and also we have the potential to do internally lit. If you click we can take the basic sign and we can either do it as a blade sign that's got reflective material on it, or we can internally light the cabinet to create some additional excitement and visibility at night. The parking directional signs, we aren't as restricted when we're on our local roadways, so we can bring them into line with the general design a little easier and have a little more character built into them. But a lot of these blade signs are very similar in that we've taken the Ferndale motif that we had in all the larger signs. We've reversed it so that it's green on a white background, and we've kind of hung it off the side of the pole there on the back side of the sign. We've also designed pedestrian directionals to help people, once we get them out of their cars, walking around, getting them out to sites throughout the downtown and other areas. Bicycle directionals, you've done put signs out to identify the bike trails and the bike ways, but in terms of directing people on those bikeways to locations. We think that there's an opportunity there in the future, so we've designed a sign for that. And then we get into some of the informational interpretive signs. We think that there's an opportunity for a directory kiosk that helps visitors recognize where in the downtown they are, where other businesses are. So it would have a map, it would have a directory of the businesses. And then we see the backside could either be a cabinet where changeable community events information can be displayed, or we could double up and put some historic information and historic cultural stories, interpretive signage on the back. So this would be kind of a ground-mounted monument sign, and then once again, if you at night have generate some interest and some character in the downtown through internal illumination. We also want this to be flexible in the future as LED and touchscreen technology becomes more prevalent and more cost-effective. We've designed it so that our directory portion could be switched out at some point in the future, and you could put in a touchscreen LED panel where visitors could interact more with this sign and get additional information from it beyond just where the businesses are. It would help them look up and find other detailed information such as hours and promotions and other things. Next sign is our interpretive street sign. We've been, as a side note on this, we've been talking with the Department of Public Works to understand what signs they would be comfortable producing and maintaining in the future. And they've felt that anything with kind of all the pole-mounted signs that you've seen, that they would be able to produce those within their sign shop. But once again, it would be dependent on staff and budget and how much they were able to accomplish. But we've had more detailed talks with them about the street sign because they are currently working on replacing all the street signs within the city right now, and they've already purchased some of the materials. So we were talking to them about what our options are if we want to move in this direction. What's the ability to find some kind of middle ground where we can use the materials that they have without changing this too dramatically from the sign design here. As we go to the next sign, we've got our interpretive and cultural and historic marker. This would be where, the 10 locations that I discussed, this would be an example of what would be there as an identifier to kind of tell the story of that building or that site. It would be similar to the directory kiosk, but a little smaller. It could be also as an alternate mounted off of the side of an existing light pole if space constraints are existing. Once again, it could be internally illuminated. And then on the next slide, we've done a couple of graphic layouts with our team to just give you a sense of this will need to be finalized, but just where the design could go in terms of the information that's in there. We see it as identifying the building, the address, when the building was built, when the site was constructed, and then a couple paragraphs telling kind of the history and the story, and a historic photo as well. Finally, in addition to the historic markers, we think that in the future, based on our stakeholder and steering committee discussions, there might be a desire to do some type of building-mounted plaque that would really stand out and get some attention. One of the examples this could be used for would be the BUILD program for funding facade improvements and other improvements to buildings. So anybody who went through a BUILD program could potentially have a wall-mounted plaque to identify, maybe a photo of what the building looked like before the improvements occurred, and give a little history on the building and the program. And once again, through some of the technology that's out there, if desired, this could be subtly internally illuminated to create some interest and just kind of vary it from the typical brass plaques that you tend to see for markers. And then I just want to touch briefly on what we've gone through. We've developed this as a master plan, something that can be used to guide future improvements, but because we have the grant, because we know we need to be aggressive with our moving forward, we wanted to identify where we thought this first phase could go in terms of the number of signs, the type of signs that we think that we can get from the funds that are still left in this program. From talking with the steering committee, the goal we saw was really to do a mix of both directional signs and informational and interpretive signs. Some of that comes directly from the grant and what it's allowed to be used for, but we thought that this would be the best use is to do, a mix of information and kind of education and understanding, and then directional to help get people around town. And we also saw that the best use of this first phase would be to kind of cluster them into a smaller area to really get the most bang for your buck and help make an impact, so that you're not driving around the city and seeing one sign here and one sign there. You're seeing a cluster of them, and you start to get a sense of how they hold together comprehensively. So what we've done is we've laid out this first phase program, what we think that would be the right direction to go. The first component of it would be to do what we see as 11 roadway directionals. We focused around the downtown and around 9 Mile. We've stayed away from Woodward Avenue because we believe that the additional permits that would be required to get through MDOT would be too costly in terms of time right now and endanger the August deadline. So we've stuck to local roads that are under your control. So we've got 11 roadway directional signs. We've got 4 at Pinecrest, 3 at Livernois, 2 as you approach Woodward Avenue, and 2 at Paxton. We see 4 of these being internally illuminated. Once again, in the downtown, we see that as being a special place, and we want to create a little different character. The next signs would be 2 directory kiosks. One would be on the west side of 9 Mile at the pedestrian crossing, and then the other would be on the east side of 9 Mile, basically when you come out of the newly redone pedestrian alley. Then we would have we would have 5 historic cultural markers. These would be 2 of them would be shared with the directory kiosks, so they would be installed on the back side of the directory kiosks. One of those would be identifying the 3 dime stores, and that would be on the back side of the directory kiosk at the pedestrian crossing. We would also do the cultural historic marker for the Pioneer Apartments, for Wabeek Bank, the school, and the Evangelical Church. So we have a nice cluster of historic information in a walkable area in the downtown. The next signs that we were seeing would be to do 4 pedestrian directional signs. These would be at both ends of the 2 pedestrian alleys on the west side of Woodward Avenue. So as you're coming into those pedestrian alleys, to direct you to other locations, to direct you to parking. And then finally, 10 parking directional signs throughout the downtown to help direct visitors and to the public parking lots. So that's our proposed program that we'd like to move forward and get bid out by qualified signage fabricators, and that's a brief overview of the master plan. And I'm open to take any questions.
Thank you. And I got to hear this presentation at Bloom's a couple weeks ago when you presented. I do have one question, and it might go to Christina or to even Byron, and that is the question of the fact that the city's already purchased some materials for signage, and it wasn't necessarily matching or in conjunction with what you were working on.
Well, one of the things that we've done is we wanted to, because of the roadway requirements, and especially on Woodward Avenue, we want to stick with a green color. And also that came through in the community discussions that a lot of people associated green with Ferndale, yes, as opposed to going in we had options for other colors. But I think there was a desire to keep the green slightly different than what you see on a typical roadway. But then again, you're also restricted in what you can do with the materials. If you want to meet roadway standards, you have to have reflective material. So there's only so many different greens that are out there. The green that we ultimately picked is a little bit different than the standard green. It still meets roadway requirements. What my understanding is that DPW had already purchased enough material in their standard green that they've been using for the current street signs, and so they've got that material stocked already, and then they have the blades, the actual sign panels, they have purchased some of those already. So what we've been talking as recently as this afternoon with DPW to understand, see if we can, if there's a possibility to exchange the green, what options we have to move forward on that, and make it, bring it into line with the master plan. Ultimately, my view is that street signs, because there are so many of them, it's not a top priority, because it's so costly to replace all your street signs. We just happen to be, unfortunately, probably 6 months too late in terms of where DPW is with the money that they've gotten, grant money that they've gotten to replace their street signs, to be able to come in and kind of line these up. So we're trying to sequence them and have these conversations and see if we can find some middle ground that sticks to the character of the master plan, but doesn't mean that we're wasting any materials.
Because I guess that's pretty important to me. Is the DPW and the DDA working together and speaking together and aware of each other's projects and timetables? Should we ask Byron to come up as well? Thanks.
As best as we can. I mean, this started just a couple months ago in terms of our planning process. I don't know when his grant came through, but DPW and other departments of the city were invited to the stakeholder meetings, and I know that we just at even our last advisory meeting, Mr. Bruner was going to go back and speak with Byron about stopping production of the street signs, so that way we could really take in the full design of where we're at. I think what was misunderstood in the conversation, though, was how much material was already purchased. That was not clear to us.
Well, Mr. Bruner, anything you want to share?
No, I don't have anything additional. Mr. Fatides, do you have anything to add to that?
Okay.
So, I mean, going forward here, are we going to stop production on these new signs and hold up? I mean, what's the game plan to not get this all jumbled up and end up with a mishmash of signs that we currently have?
Because we spoke with Jack Crowley this afternoon. He's going to go back and determine how much material is already there, and speak with the company about whether or not the color can be exchanged. I think in terms of the design, one of the things that we looked at with the street sign, in terms of modifications that Jack had requested, and what they were finding is that some of their major arteries would need higher letter heights, which really, that is not a problem. That to change it from 6 to 8, not a large issue to do that. I think the coloring is definitely one thing that we have to see how much material has been purchased and whether or not that could be exchanged or not. And we don't have an answer on that right now. And then the other thing is actually the cut of the sign, and we know that what did you refer to those as? The blade. So understanding how they create the sign, they have the metal blade, and then they apply the 3M color material on top of that. So whether or not we have to modify the spec design where we have a flatter edge on one end and rounded on the other to what they already have to conform with what they have, as opposed to vice versa, we may have to do that. But I think that's one thing that they would have to look at, though, as well, is whether or not that's going to have an impact in terms of the overall cost for that type of blade sign. And I would have to defer to Daniel myself on what potential cost increase that might be as they purchase more of those blade signs. And I'm not sure how many of those blades that they've already purchased at this point.
I guess I'd also like to add that, you know, we've worked on signage programs in many different communities, and really we've seen successful projects where you don't even address the street signs. So to me, the importance of having the street signs match exactly the rest of the program, that's another reason why I just see street signs as being a lower priority item. It's because, you know, when you start establishing the character, in some ways the important signs are really the gateways, the major directionals, these kiosks, and those go a long way towards creating that character and reinforcing that character. And I think that you know, if hopefully this program will have this, definitely we're going to have this first phase go in August, and I think that it's going to really have a lot of power in showing the character and the look. And then hopefully it'll have some legs and we'll be able to get additional grant money or find other ways to make future phases happen. But it's a master plan. It's you know, we wanted to be comprehensive. We wanted to design every sign, you know, outside of regulatory signs like parking,
right,
you know,
okay,
hours and stuff like that.
Okay.
So I think that I don't see it as being a critical item. It would be nice if we can find some middle ground, and I think that we can, and we'll continue to work with the DPW.
Great. I think it would be really nice, and I think I speak for the council in wanting everyone to communicate and collaborate. Anyone disagree with that? Could you help us, Mr. Bruner, in making sure that as we move forward that we're being efficient and that there's as much communication and linkage as need be between the various city departments so that we do end up with a unified project? It's very exciting. It's going to look great. But we always want the left hand to know what the right hand is doing and vice versa. Are we looking for action tonight?
I'm
so
sorry,
to
I
speak?
had a request
Go ahead,
for
ma'am.
information. Sorry. I know it's going a long time, but one thing that stuck out in your presentation was when we came specifically to the public schools and the incorporation of the electronic signs. And electronic signs are not permitted in our zoning ordinance. Public schools can have whatever they want because they're not regulated by our zoning ordinance, hence they have these electronic signs. I wonder, did you incorporate them into the drawings because they were already existing and you thought that that's what the schools preferred, or did you get some feedback maybe from business owners in the forums that you held that said that other people were interested in electronic?
Well, it was really on all public buildings, not just the schools. So we looked at what was out there in terms of in front of the fire stations, in front of City Hall. You know, the police sign there's changeable information, and what we heard is from a maintenance perspective, to go out and change that information and keep it current becomes somewhat of an issue. And the only real way around that to still allow for changeable information and reduce the maintenance and the time spent is to switch to some type of electronic sign. Now, you know, if the city doesn't want to set a precedent with that on its own buildings, you know, that's clearly something that we would want to address. But ultimately, you know, from a professional standpoint, I think it can be regulated and handled in a way that it looks better than the plastic change-out letters.
It'll, I imagine, be a conversation between the Planning Commission and business owners that is kind of brewing on the horizon. It's already happened a couple times. So it's interesting to see it integrated into a future plan for downtown wayfinding. Just struck me in particular. I'm all set, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other requests for information?
I think I got everything I need, Mayor.
Okay. Are we taking any action tonight? Approve the design plan and phase 1 scope of the work? Is that correct?
Yep, for bid purposes, yep. I would move that we approve the Ferndale Preserve America Wayfinding and Cultural Tourism Design Plan in Phase 1, Scope of Work Option Number 3 for bid purposes.
Support.
Thank you. Motion made and seconded, Galloway Baker. Discussion. Madam Clerk.
Councilmembers Piana,
Yes.
Baker? Yes. Galloway?
Yes.
Lennon?
Yes.
And Mayor Covey.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Next item, Madam Clerk.
We are at regular item C, consideration of a resolution encouraging research for the placement of an additional crosswalk on Woodward Avenue.
Yes, ma'am. If the council doesn't mind, I would like to read this, and I want to make a couple of changes. It's short, and I'll read it as the changes I'd like to see, if someone would move. Woodward Avenue is a bustling thoroughfare running directly through the downtown city of Ferndale. And there are 4 crosswalks in Ferndale along the 2-mile span of Woodward Avenue at Fielding, Pearson, 9 Mile, and Camborne. Although the majority of pedestrians cross at 9 Mile, many people cross north and south of the intersections where there are no crosswalks. In January of this year, a young woman was critically injured when she was hit by a vehicle crossing Woodward near Vester, and in 2008, a man was hit crossing in the same area. Due to the resurgence of our businesses located the district, the volume of foot traffic has risen substantially, in downtown Ferndale. Many people cross Woodward Avenue every day to access parking, businesses, clubs, and restaurants. We, Ferndale's elected officials, call upon the Michigan Department of Transportation to research the feasibility of placing an additional crosswalk on Woodward Avenue in Ferndale at or near the Withington and Vester intersections. That's a little closer to what I had requested. Any thoughts from the table? It's basically going to MDOT. We've already been lobbying them to replace. We had a intersection crosswalk at Vester and Withington through the early 90s, and it was made to disappear.
I think we asked them to make it disappear, if I remember the story correctly. So just so that we're aware, I kind of wanted to ask you and Councilman Galloway and perhaps Byron or the Chief Kitchen, whoever's the right person, what the history is right there, because the story I heard was that the city of Ferndale requested that it be taken out, and now we're requesting that it be put back, which is fine. Things change and needs change.
And that story may or may not be accurate. I don't believe I was on council at the time.
I wasn't. It was Gettard. Was it his request? I forget.
I just want to make sure we all understand the story so that when MDOT says, great, thanks, guys, now you want it
Byron
back.
may be able to enlighten us.
The question is, how did we get to?
Why did it go away, the Withington crosswalk?
The light was removed when the city made the decision to make Vester two-way. It used to be one-way, westbound. And at the time, because of traffic conflicts, they felt that it would be better to take the light out, extend the median, because we were making Vester two ways. It used to be just one way. You would cross Woodward and go right down Withington. And when they made Vester two ways, there would be a conflict. And so the city decided, and I think the police department was involved, and the council unanimously petitioned MDOT to remove the light.
Okay.
So it was at the city's request.
Thank you.
Early 90s?
Mid-90s, 95, 96, somewhere around there. When we got the bond issue passed, we used that money to help pay for it, because we had to pay for it.
Okay.
Thank you. Just wanted to make sure we all understood.
Makes sense. I mean, and maybe we made the right decision, or maybe we made the wrong decision. I asked that this be put together because there have been a number of folks hit, and because of the location of Hambo's, Boogie Fever, several other stores, and particularly at night, there are people all the time running across.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And it would help calm traffic. Speed limit is 35 when you go through Ferndale. Not everyone obeys that rule. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to add that probably back in 2003 or 2004, we actually pursued MDOT again regarding the crosswalk. I know that personally I met with MDOT to ask them about that, and what they had said that they would need to do is conduct a study as to how many people are actually crossing at that point at a mid-block point, basically. Right. And they had determined that there wasn't enough foot traffic. But, I mean, I can tell you, sitting up top at Woodward Avenue Brewers at during the middle of winter and looking at where people are crossing, they're crossing through the median and over the grass, and you can see their foots in the snow print, in the snow. So I think that there's definitely been precedence in terms of other midpoints along Woodward Avenue in Birmingham specifically, Royal Oak. So I think that if you're to pursue this, I would actually really encourage you to try to get WA3 on board with this as well, since they have obviously some weight and obviously MDOT participation on their board of directors.
Thank you.
Good point, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
I have some suggestions to augment your resolution.
Please. Actually, there's no motion on the table, so it still needs a motion,
Motion.
and you could change it with your motion if you chose.
Well, let me discuss the suggestions first, and then we can help wordsmith it into a coherent sentence. But I think MDOT has changed some of their focus and how they're doing community design in vehicle or traffic improvements. And I think we need to promote this resolution, or the reason we're offering this is to increase pedestrian safety, as you had said, calm traffic speeds so that the current speed limit is actually enforced, and crosswalks are a traffic calming device. This also would improve the walkability of the community, which is a general concept that the governor's office supports, MDOT and other agencies across the state of Michigan. And I think it will also improve business, economic development activity, because we're offering another way to get to those businesses rather than at certain points across Woodward. And overall, I'm generally a little cynical of MDOT, but I think their feasibility studies have been on the lack of walkers, right, based off of current conditions. So if it's not there, then of course you're going to have a lack of walkers because it's not safe for them to walk. So
Interestingly also is whether they measure during the afternoon or the daytime or the morning, or whether it's measured at night. And we know that at night, on weekends, certainly when maybe all MDOT employees aren't working, is when you see heavier traffic. Yes, sir.
I just want to mention the traffic safety officer for MDOT, the Oakland County Division, Steve Stramsack, is looking into this. I mean, one of the issues is one of the criteria they use is the number of people walking in a 4-hour period over a certain number of days. We're not going to meet that warrant. They're not going to issue that. But MDOT does have the discretion to look at something from an accident standpoint. So there's some subjectivity in this too. So regardless if, I think he had mentioned to me 400, they had to be like 400 people crossing at a certain time, number of hours and so forth. Well, we're not going to get 400 people. But when I spoke with him, I said that it was an ongoing problem. It was an ongoing problem with many of the people who attend the beauty school, the college there. They're constantly walking across Woodward Avenue. And so he said that he would perhaps get a response back to the city sometime in mid to late February. So MDOT is looking at this. Certainly when you have a situation where someone's hit by a car and there's a serious injury, they're not going to take it lightly. So it's not going to just be based on pedestrian counts.
Thanks, Byron. Hey, my feelings wouldn't be hurt if we actually tabled this. The wordsmithing you're suggesting is excellent. Rather than do it at the table, I'd be happy to work with the city clerk, bring it back in 2 weeks.
Sure.
With some additional verbiage that's a little smoother, talks about pedestrian safety, calming, walkability. It would also go to the Woodward Avenue Action Association and perhaps other entities. So if that's all right, I'll just withdraw this and bring it back.
Sure.
All right.
I wonder if we could also... Maybe we get a sign up there that says use pedestrian crosswalk, too.
As long as it matches the...
I wonder if we could also get the TIA to do a safety study on that.
If they measure it during Dream Cruise or Pride Fest, I think you'd get the 400, but normally you're not. It's going to be me and Larry Mills running across Woodward Avenue probably.
But you can run across 200 times.
Taking pictures, yeah.
Well, I think that is...
Madam Clerk, next item, before we get too crazy up here.
Okay. We're back to the consent agenda, item C, consideration to adopt a resolution of condolence for the family of Margaret Reddy.
Will you speak to this, please, Councilwoman?
Absolutely. I hope that we would have unanimous support for this, but did want to read it out loud. see, at the regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Ferndale, held on the 8th day of February 2010, the following resolution was moved and supported, hopefully unanimously, that Margaret V. Reddy, 78, of Oxford, a longtime Royal Oak resident and mother of Finance Director, Assistant City Manager Jane Marie Hubanks, passed away February 1st, 2010. Mrs. Reddy was born September 12, 1931, to Perry and Genevieve Vandercook. She was married to her beloved husband, Walt, for 57 years. Mrs. Reddy enjoyed antiques, sewing, knitting, and crafts. She also volunteered at the National Shrine of the Little Flower, working in the mailroom and the kitchen. Margaret Reddy will be missed by many, but especially by her loving husband, Walt, her children, Joan Klein, Jane Marie Hubanks, Wally Reddy, and Charles Reddy, her sister-in-law, Doris Rasco, brother-in-law, Joe Zott, grandchildren, Stacy, oh goodness, I don't know that I can say Stacy's last name, Denise Ellison, Matt Klein, Charlie Reddy, and Matthew Reddy, and great-grandchildren, Lily, Aiden, Luke, and Sheldon. Therefore, be it resolved that we, Ferndale's elected officials, do hereby extend our community's condolences to the family of Margaret V. Reddy. Do I have unanimous support?
Support. You do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Baker, and our
Get that last name out. I'm sorry.
heartfelt feelings go out to our Finance Director and her husband, the Fire Chief of
Very
Inkster.
sad. Yes.
Madam Clerk, what's next?
Council liaison reports, if any?
Mr. Brunner, anything you'd like to share?
I do not have anything tonight, Your Honor. Thank you.
Lots of good things happening. Not time to read all the Woodward Avenue action items that are pretty cool. Anyone else, anything to share? Madam Clerk?
Call to council?
Call to council. Fire Chief Schmidt, anything to share from the fire department, sir?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Thank you kindly. Chief Kitchen from the police department.
Nothing this evening, Your Honor.
Thank you kindly. Byron, anything from DPW?
Yes, I will.
We do have a snowstorm coming, correct?
That's why I'm here.
Appreciate that, sir. Tell us what to do and not to do.
Well, we're expecting up between 5 and 8 inches through Wednesday, so it probably will be our first snow emergency this year. We're asking the residents to take their vehicles, unless you have a permit from the city of Ferndale, to remove your vehicles off the street until, once we declare it, and until after the emergency is done with. We also ask those people who have vehicles that they leave in our parking lots, they have stickers, they might live in an apartment building, or they might have a vehicle for a business, that anything over 2 inches, they're going to have to move their vehicle either to the east Breckenridge lot or the west Breckenridge lot, so we can, and between 2 and 6 a.m., so we can get to the parking lots. Certainly would get our job done a lot quicker.
Thank you, sir. Christine, anything else from the DDA tonight? No. Thank you. From the city clerk. Our city clerk is on a well-deserved trip to Florida.
Yes, she
There'll be
is.
no snow in Florida tonight.
No, she's not going to be dealing with our snow emergency. But we do just want to remind everyone that tomorrow, February 9th, is the deadline to apply to run for a school board for either Ferndale or Hazel Park. You must apply at the county before 4 p.m. That will be for the May 4th election. And we have 2 seats open in Ferndale and 1 in Hazel Park.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Monday, is it a holiday for the city?
Yes, it is. We are
City-
closed for President's Day on Monday. the 15th.
Offices are closed this coming Monday. Mr. Brunner,
Nothing else from me tonight, Your Honor.
are you taking a well-deserved trip starting tomorrow?
I am. I hope to beat the weather and make it to Florida in time for lunch tomorrow to visit.
Well, the storm
my,
starts tomorrow. What time are you leaving?
9 a.m.
Yeah, you might be okay. Good luck. Mr. Christ.
I have nothing.
From City Attorney. Councilwoman Baker.
First, a question for the police chief. I don't mean to catch you off guard, Chief Kitchen. Quick question for you. And it has to do with the young woman from West Troy Street earlier this evening who was speaking about not just the noise from Rosie O'Grady's, which I know we measure regularly, but the vibrations. And I remember a council meeting a while ago, maybe a year ago, we talked about problems at what used to be the Temple Bar, and the residents on Withington had meters to measure vibration. Do those still exist, and are they being deployed on West Troy Street?
We're using the same meters now that we used then, and it does measure that sound. However, that's been one we've been unable to really conquer. The city attorney knows very well, and as does the mayor, about those sounds and measuring them and feeling them and enforcing them. It's always going to be a problem. We had some success down at what is now Eden, but it cost them a ton of money in soundproofing in order to stop it. But I believe her concerns are valid.
Thank you.
I'm going to talk with the owners and managers again. They seem to want to work with us. They do want to work with us a lot, and sometimes it's not even music. It's televisions in there. But
Sure.
we did get the outdoor music turned off, and I suspect there is some sensitivity there, and how it travels. But maybe some planting of some more foliage or something might be able to help.
I just wanted to make sure that for residents of the area, we hear from them pretty regularly, that they know that the police department is doing their best to monitor, but unfortunately you can't be everywhere.
Well, and we do measure, and they are within the measurements of the current ordinance, and it does change at 10 or 11. Weekends are different, so maybe we can talk to them about the late hour issues. Yes?
As part of his response, Councilwoman, through the chair, of course, Mr. Kramer has the identical sound meter we use, and he purchased that early on. I mean, his response has been very good, but, that's a tough problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not quiet. Yes, Mr.
Yeah,
Chris?
just to add to that issue, the city manager did ask that I look at what comparable communities have set their ordinances relative to both A and C weighting, and the city's current thresholds are within the certainly within the range of what other communities are setting their limitations at.
Very good. I think part of the issue is that home is very, very near downtown, and that is part of the issue. What else, Kate?
Also, just a thank you for sitting through those design presentations. It's been a project that I guess probably 8 or 10 of us on the project team have been working on for months now. And we really, I mean, you saw the designs, the external designs tonight, and people at home saw those external designs, but we really strove to make sure that the internal design was as important as the external, and that the buildings needed to work internally. They needed to be affordable. And then the design, the external design, needed to meet our established priorities that were laid out in the master plan and the zoning ordinance by the community. So I said all along that I didn't care what it looked like as long as it fit within our zoning ordinance, because I knew our ordinance was written to build things that we wanted to see in our downtown. We can continue to talk about the project. I hope that we do. There is no simple solution to what we need in Ferndale. We need a combination, and I know we'll continue to talk about a combination of cuts, concessions, and other things with our staff, but we also need to think about what we've been saving for, what our infrastructure priorities are, and what we need to do to keep moving our community forward. We have got a courthouse that's literally about to fall down around the court. So I hope that, and I think we've taken a good step by postponing these decisions until May. I hope that we continue to think about moving Ferndale forward as we make adjustments for the future and the size of our future workforce. So I know we'll have more discussions about those internal designs. I do have a preference that I'm happy to share with any of you among those two. So just look forward to the rest of the conversation.
I agree. Councilman?
I have nothing tonight.
Councilwoman Piana.
Sure. I have a few things, and I'll try to keep them short. I attended the Ferndale Schools Community Breakfast, and it was a fantastic event. I'm so impressed with our students within Ferndale, at Ferndale High School and the University High School, and I'm excited to start going to these every year while I'm on council and representing council at these. So I'm also wanted to keep the mentoring type of position going that we've had, that I think Tamiko set up between one of the students and city council, so I'm exploring how do we do that in that manner, so stay tuned for that. Also, I've been asked to participate in the Michigan Municipal League's Transportation Policy Committee, and I'm very excited to submit my application and represent the city of Ferndale at that level, so that we can make sure that mass transit and transit solutions come down Woodward. And then I just wanted to mention something about our budget issues within the city. And I know there is a lot of concern out with our city staff and the residents about potential cuts to staff. And I just want to make sure everybody understands my point of view is that my value my values and my approach going into these budget sessions is to preserve as many jobs as possible. And I think everybody on council shares this value. Now, wrap that around the major issues that are constraining our municipal budget. I just want everybody to make sure that they participate in this process. Let us know what services they want to keep. And I know the top one is police and fire. And so that we can prioritize as we start our discussions in March, and we can work as a team in solving these pretty enormous budget challenges. And that local government is changing, our size of our workforce is changing, how we deliver our services is changing, and so we're really at this whole new, I look at it as an opportunity. How do we pick up from where we are at our local government in the state of Michigan and move forward? So balancing what we have and moving forward and trying to really make that work. And it's a really difficult situation that we're in based off of our lack of revenue. So just wanted to share my values, how I'm approaching this, openness, transparency, and making sure that people understand what our constraints are. So that's it.
Well said. Councilman Galloway?
Yeah, given some of the remarks that have been made on the internet this week, I also wanted to speak to the budget situation. And as folks may or may not know, I think 4 of us live south of 9 Mile or have lived south from 9 Mile. 2 of us live fairly close to 8 Mile. Every summer night when I have my windows open, I go to bed to the sound of gunshots coming over from Detroit. So we're acutely aware of the need for a strong police and fire department. The fire department, of course, services Pleasant Ridge and took care of my parents when they had some problems a couple of years ago. So we know and value and appreciate a strong police and fire department. However, the city of Ferndale is really between a rock and a hard spot with this upcoming budget. The city is prohibited by law from raising taxes. We can't do it. It can only be done by citizen initiative. And our opportunities to cut costs are similarly constrained significantly, since most of our discretionary spending is in personnel costs, something well over 50%, I think well over 70%.
It's about 75%.
About 75%. So when we have a significant, and then on top of that, our 2 major revenue sources are also largely out of the control of the city. Those are property taxes. Our millage rate has rolled back from a constitutional maximum of 20 mills to 14 and some change. And as property values go down, of course, the revenues that the city takes in go down. And on top of that, state shared revenue has been cut repeatedly during my time here on City Council. But the one thing that we can influence is that state shared revenue. And that's a decision that's made in Lansing. It's a political decision. Every budget year, the folks in Lansing get to decide whether they're going to fully fund state shared revenue or not. And currently, the Senate has chosen not to fully fund state shared revenue. And all the folks that are coming here are going to hear from me every time they complain about how much money we have to cut out of the budget, and ask them whether or not they've contacted the leadership of the Senate. Mike Bishop is running for Attorney General, but apparently doesn't support the police and fire departments of the state of Michigan. So I think we should all call him. And in fact,
Do you have that number?
I do. Let's see if we can get it up here on the screen. Mike Bishop's telephone number is 517-373-2417. Again, that's Mike Bishop, 517-373-2417. So that's the quickest and surest way that we can get millions of dollars more into the city budget and restore and perhaps even add police and firefighters if that state shared revenue was fully restored to where it was supposed to be before it started getting cut. So 517-373-2417. And it would be great if we could flood his lines and tell him, ask him why he doesn't care more about police and fire departments while he's running for state attorney general. Unfortunately, my guess is that he will not budge on his decision to not fully fund state shared revenue. So the city has 4 large general fund budgets that we can cut from. And those 4 large budgets are the police department, the fire department, the court, and the Parks and Rec. All 4 of those come out of general fund, and if we don't get some help from Lansing, there's going to be some pretty significant cuts out of there, because the other, I guess the hard spot, you know, the rock being declining revenues, the hard spot is the city of Ferndale is required to have a balanced budget. We can't go into deficit spending. We can't float T-bills or you know, go out on the bond market to fund general operations. We have to be balanced. So when property values go down in a way that none of us can control, when Lansing decides to cut our funds, and when we're mandated to have a balanced budget, there's really not much the city can do besides cut the police department, the fire department, the court, and the Parks and Rec. So everyone up here is going to do what they can to maintain a strong police department, a strong fire department, and where we can, courts and Parks and Rec. But the fact of the matter is, it's not going to happen. The court, the Parks and Rec, the fire department, and the police department are all going to take big cuts if something doesn't happen in Lansing this year. And people can get mad at us, and that's what local government's for. That's fine. We'll certainly be ear to hear those complaints, but we'll also be an advocate in Lansing to get that changed. But if people really want to affect change, I would call Senate Majority Leader Bishop, and more importantly, for those members of the police and fire department who live in districts that are represented by Republican senators, it would be good if they and their friends and their neighbors got together and called their state senators to get their vote on these things. We can call Gilda Jacobs, and I suspect she'll say that she voted the right way every time, but we need our police and firefighters who live out county to get their friends organized and get state shared revenue fully funded. So I'm going to sound like a broken record, but there's going to be a speech like this just about every single council meeting until we pass the budget. So there you have it.
Well done, Councilman. Thanks. City of Holland has to cut $2 million, 25 employees. Wayne County, 200 layoffs, looking at closing on Fridays. Sterling Heights has to lay off dozens and dozens of people. It's on and on and on. Warren, millions of dollars cut. It's not just Ferndale, it's every city in the state. We will protect the city, we will keep services, but it's getting harder and harder and harder. And we can look at a millage next year. That won't solve the problem. It's too big. On a better note, we finished up the 10-day Ferndale Blues Festival. I'll have a report for you all later. Dozens and dozens of volunteers make it happen. We couldn't make it happen without it. It was the most successful festival yet. It was year 9. It was tough. I went out 8 out of 9 nights, and it's a tough job, but, you know, that's why I'm the mayor. But really good time. I think we're going to break all the records in terms of fundraising, particularly a shout-out to Dean Bach, who put on the ribs burnout on Saturday. Chief Kitchen, you did great. You temporarily lost your your throne there as to the best ribs, but State Farm, Marty O'Neill won this time. And it was a really, and double crowds. I've never seen so many people come out. I think the weather was nice, but a lot of ribs were eaten. I have one neat thing. We get complaints and we get, emails sometimes that aren't nice, but we also get nice things once in a while. I'm not going to read all of this, but a woman named Teresa, a retired nun, lives on the southwest part of Ferndale, wrote a nice note and said to all of us, take care of yourselves. You are really needed. I've lived in many places. Ferndale functions better than any of the other places I've lived. This is Sister Teresa, retired nun, who is in her late 70s. With that, a long meeting.
Your Honor, I think we got to go into closed session.
We're going into closed session? I wasn't paying attention. Well, is there a motion to go into closed session?
Never go home.
Yes, we will.
I move to go into closed session for the purpose of consulting our attorney regarding pending litigation pursuant to Section 8E of the Open Meetings Act, MCL 15.2680.
Very good. Motion made. Seconded? Support. Yep, support. Well, those watching on television at home, we will black out at this point.
We're ready.
We are back in open session. Is there a motion?
I move that we direct the city attorney to settle the pending litigation as directed by counsel that was previously discussed in closed session.
Support.
Adequate, Mr. Christ?
It is, Your Honor.
Motion made and seconded. Lennon, Galloway. Discussion, vote.
Council members Baker?
Yes.
Galloway?
Yes.
Lennon?
Yes.
Kiana?
Yes.
And Mayor Covey?
Yes. No further business. This meeting is adjourned.